and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the continuation of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 9, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 3 of 8 as our drivers make the way to Italy for the Monza circuit. Known in full as the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, this Italian temple of speed is like none other when it comes to fast and furious racing, whereby its 3 chicanes, sweeping medium apex speed corners and elongated straights will determine who is the boldest on the brakes and who has the ability to get back on the throttle as soon as possible to make the run to the next corner. Whereas our first 2 rounds have been a mixture of technical aspects and a balance of performance across the characteristics of the circuit, the name of the game today is the need for speed, and who will find it on the way to victory. We will find out, of course, over the procedure of our sprint race, the third in sequence in our calendar. But as you can see in the background, our drivers getting set in the final practice warm-up session. This is also a round where it's a major risk versus reward gamble, whereby with the 24 Hours of Daytona special event on iRacing having taken place this weekend, our drivers will be feeling tired, particularly those who participated in the event from the start to finish and did the night stint perhaps, or just come from the race, took a cup of coffee or two and have made the way onto the tarmac at Monza. Elsewhere, of course, some drivers may decide not to take to this round and therefore automatically use it as a drop round, with there only being one sprint race round available as a drop round and the other one being an endurance race, and therefore it's about who can pick up the key points here, as there could be some major opportunities. Now we say that, but we will be having a total of approximately 45 if not 50 drivers in attendance today. I think everybody looking to shine high here in Monza and get it right first time round and bring home some major points. And as our drivers get set to go, let's review our schedule with regards to our season ahead. But before we do that, of course, this is a reminder that all the broadcasts this season, as we see the question there from Alan Levitt in the YouTube chat, all the broadcasts this season are being brought to you live from circuit side on the UKSimRacing official YouTube channel. And in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing all of your racing action tonight and indeed for the remainder of the season. But as we make our way to the season ahead, we can see the story so far. We started back in round number 1 at Silverstone in the United Kingdom, and there on the 8th of January we raised the curtain and got underway for what was an absolutely vicious, in terms of the intensity of racing, round of action on the high downforce, high speed circuit. And of course it was all about who mastered the art of carrying speed from corner to corner, and particularly in those medium and high apex speed corners, whereby you had to have the bravery combined with the mastery of the car to be able to come out on top. Then we made our way across the Atlantic Ocean to the United States of America, to the state of Florida for the Daytona circuit. On the 15th of January, the precursors to the 24 Hours of Daytona, with our own sprint race at Daytona, the 45 minutes of Daytona if you will, and there it was the story of Protech Motorsport with Ryan Moll's pipping teammate Daniel Thomas to the finish line in a classic drag race photo finish as they made the way on through and broke clear of the field. But today in Monza, it is going to be a nature of slipstream battling, but it's also going to be about battling on the brakes, and of course that infamous sentence of Monza Turn 1, and we do hope all our drivers are able to make it through there unscathed with regards to damage, and who will be able to pick up the places early on and then go charging off into the distance. For it is the 22nd of January, and after today we'll be making our way over to France as we continue the series tour of the European continent for the Magny-Cours circuit in Nevers, France, now being round number 4 on the 29th of January in our first endurance round of the season, with the racing duration doubles to 90 minutes, and there the stakes could not be higher as all of our drivers look to press on and really look to maintain that consistency and the mastery of their machinery, albeit over the long time duration. And then we'll take a week's break before returning on the 12th of February for round number 5 in Germany at the Nürburgring Grand Prix at Strecker Circuit. And as our drivers go in there once again in the sprint round, it'll be all guns blazing with regards to trying to make that impression on the return from the season break. Indeed, those are the momentum going into the break, we're looking to carry it forward, whereas those who had a difficult run in the first 4 rounds will be looking to turn things around. We then make our way down under to Australia for the Mount Panorama Raceway, or Bathurst as we all love to call it, and that'll be in round number 6 on the 19th of February, a sprint up and down the mountain before our penultimate round sees us go to the South American continent, and particular Interlagos in Brazil for the sprint race, the final sprint race of the season on the 26th of February, and then we bring it all to a close back in the United States of America at the Sebring circuit on the 5th of March in the final endurance round. And what better place to bring it all to a close on the old airstrip that is Sebring in round number 8. As we get ready to go today, let's introduce our circuit informal, and it is the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, the Grand Prix layout. And as we can see here from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, this circuit, located near the town of Monza in Italy, is a circuit which is the staple of Italian Formula 1 Grand Prix, whereby as our drivers make the way across the start-finish line straight, they'll be reaching their maximum possible speed in the charge into the Prima Variante chicane, or turns 1 and 2 as they get onto the anchors, going all the way down from an excess of 160 miles an hour down to first gear, and they slide their way between the two apexes before getting back on the power and charging through Curva Pisano. Coming through Curva Pisano, also known as Curva Grande, they'll make their way through turn number 3, flat out all the way towards the Seconda Variante, the second chicane, and as they go onto the anchors once again through turns 4 and 5, then they make their way up towards turn number 6. Of course, these chicanes, the first two chicanes, also known as the Rettivillo in turns 1 and 2, and the Regia chicane at turns 4 and 5, but as they head out of Regia, they'll make their way up towards the two Lesmos at turns 6 and 7, our two medium speed apexes there as they roar their way through the right-hander at turn number 6, and then stamp their way onto the brakes at turn number 7 with sharper line, and therefore only one wide as they make their way through turn 7 and down the Seraglio straight. Heading on down the back straight, all the way up towards turn number 8, they'll make their way into the third and final chicane of Ascari there, the medium speed chicane, which is all about the exit through turn number 9 and then flat out through turn number 10. Indeed, we could see some loose rear ends on the cars become unstable even further and go a little bit wide, or some drivers understeer on with too much speed, and that is the chicane where all matters as they make their way down towards Parabolica curve at turn number 11, and as they come on out of the final corner, another medium speed early apex corner, they'll power their way to the start finish line to only do it again over the multitude of laps that are on array. But as we get ready to go with regards to the circuit, let's also talk a little bit about the rules, and just to remind you of the rules for these rounds and the entire series. In terms of car setup, car fuel loads have been restricted to 45% for all races, which means we are expecting a pit stop for fuel today. Qualifying wise, a lone qualifying format shall be used, whereby all the drivers will take to an isolated instance of the circuit, and therefore they'll have the opportunity to be able to put in their laps without the pressure of having to find a way through the traffic of the rest of the field, and drivers have 4 laps or 15 minutes, whichever expires first, to set their best possible time. So they have 1 out lap and then they have 4 fast laps. Sprint race wise, there is a race commencement via double fold rolling start, as is the tradition. There shall be no mandatory pit stop requirements, and therefore you can imagine that some drivers may try to fuel save as much as possible, but with the 45% fuel load, we are expecting that quick stop for fuel, and then we have no fast repairs available. So if a driver gets it wrong and they pick up damage, there's no instant repair in the pits. They tow on back or they limp the way back to the pits, and they have to wait until the car's repaired, or they have to try and soldier on if they pick up a bump or scrape or two. And a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. But that's all the rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here for, and as we head up back to our live pictures, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or Universal Coordinated Time, UTC. Our timing is as follows. In just under 8 minutes time, we'll head into our qualifying session at 8 o'clock this evening, and then we'll see all of our drivers attack the circuit in anger for the first time this evening, looking to set the best possible lap, and of course qualifying could be key, given the fact that our drivers will be looking for as much space as possible on circuit going into the race, and they'll want to be right up the front to avoid the concertina effect into turns 1 and 2 on the opening lap, and then we'll head straight over to the grid for our sprint race. Our one and only race today, 45 minutes in duration, and that will be at 8:15 this evening. And well, who will prevail in Italy? That's the big question. And with the 5.75 kilometre circuit here, you can imagine that everybody right now will be itching to do as well as they possibly can. But of course, a lot of drivers will be wary of the fact that this is a circuit where instance can be quite high, given that run into turn number 1. But as we look to our drivers making the way on around at the moment, and we do there clear the race information from the screen, we can see, looking across the classes, Joshua Pratt from TE-Simsport Toa making his way through turns 4 and 5, coming through Regia and up towards the Lesmos he goes, as he makes his way on up here, looking to the class classifications on the left hand side of your screen. And well, we can see right now Joshua Pratt, second of our elite drivers, roaring on through. And we do say hi to a number of you there in the YouTube chat, including Greg Jenny. Also, we see there Alan Lever and also Medmo. Good evening to you all, guys. Indeed, if you're tuning in right now, do not be shy. Feel free to say hi. We don't bite here at UKSimRacing Community. We try to be as friendly and as accommodating as possible to everybody involved. And well, if you've been hearing a lot about Daytona recently on iRacing, of course, we're giving you something a little bit different this evening with regards to you get to hear a bit more about Monza instead. Going from Florida in the US, of course, to Monza in Italy. Quite the transition across the globe, but with GT3 cars fully in effect here. Well, we're looking forward to seeing how our drivers make that transition as well. So with so many of our drivers taking part in the Daytona 24 hours, and as we say hello to Medmo there, who says, spent the last day following our team's Daytona 24 hours, time to round it off with some GT3 action. That's the spirit, Medmo. I love your spirit there. And well, what can we expect tonight? Well, if we look to what is the elite class, of course, Daniel Thomas, our championship leader going into this round, but right now, as far as I can see, we do not have the Protech Motorsport driver out on circuit, although we do have his teammate of Ryan Moles making his way on down the back run there up towards the final corner as he heads into Parabolica curve, and as he makes his way in under the brake in here, of course, Moles the last time out, pipping his teammate to the win, but Daniel Thomas continues to hold the championship lead by 10 points over Daniel Lee, and Daniel Lee, the driver who on home turf for for his choice of car, and that is the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. As we see the privateer here, he'll be looking to make the Scudera very proud indeed as he makes his way down towards the braking zone for Parabolica, and then 2 points behind him is Ryan Moles as he makes his way onto the anchors here right now. But in the 188 car, he'll be looking to have the ultimate result today, and he will want to win. And one thing we do know about this Ferrari is it absolutely flies around Monza. It's got a very high top end speed, albeit it takes a bit of time to get that speed, but in the draft it may just be able to hit the mark and out-drag everything into the next corner, and that's what the Briton will be hoping for today. But meanwhile, as we look from the elite class then to the pros, what we can see right now at the top of the timings, it is Alex Gaines, and indeed he is the #1 driver at the moment in the pro class, leading by only a single point over Peter Cox. The differences could not be starker in terms of the contrast. Alex Gaines has been the driver who has found a way to pull off the miracle in each round so far. Having started P10 in what was round number 1 at Silverstone, he made his way to second place. At Daytona, he qualified a bit better and ended up finishing on the podium in the end in P3 after an incident that involved 2 of the top 3 right at the end, saw them drop down the order, and Gaines was the one to pick up the pieces as a result. And the Frenchman right now running a major form of consistency, whereas you could argue his peers have yet to find the consistency. And will it be Mr. Consistent here from France, or will it be one of the rising stars in the class who manages to find a way to pit Gaines to the post today and bring home the win and take the championship lead going into our next round? That'll be the question we wait to find out the answer to. But with so many drivers in the class, including John Eddowes as well from UKSimRacing Kimi, and we also do have what is Peter Cox and Jeff Griffiths in the pits there, and Peter Cox from UKSimRacing. So many drivers, so close on pace in the pro class, you would imagine here anybody could theoretically be the winner. But then we also do have in the AM class, and let's not forget about AMs, and well, here's one of the big names who right now is really taking to the top of the stands, Adrian Kukulas here, and the American as he makes his way on down towards what is turn number 8 going into Ascari, representing the United States of America here, and getting ready to go onto the brakes as he comes on down in the Porsche. And we're not expecting the Porsche to be as strong here today, given the fact the emphasis on what is straight line speed over cornering. But of course this Porsche very flexible through the corners, it's got a very loose rear end, and that makes it very strong from the medium speed chicane of what is Ascari. And can Kukulas find a way to get that Porsche right up? Indeed, it was the right of the Porsches last time out in Daytona, whereby we did see for a long time Eden Frazina leading the way, but it was a technical retirement which cost him the win in the end. Instead, Kukulas, one of the major drivers to benefit as a result. As our drivers get roaring on around. The championship leader, meanwhile, in the AM class is none other than Darren Sharples, who is leading by 12 points currently. We can't see Sharples out on circuit at the moment. I do believe he's actually in the pit lane, and in fact we do see Sharples there parked on up, albeit obscured a little bit camera shy perhaps, but Darren Sharples there parked up in amongst a medley of cars, and well, the Briton leading by 12 points over Mark Johnson. But again, much like we said about the pro class, there are so many drivers in the AM class who are on championship leading pace here, and Sharples has been denied 2 wins out of 2. Can he at the third time try and bring home his first win of the season? Because at Silverstone he was thwarted at the very end, being held off to the checker flag, and last time out at Daytona, again, just not quite there to bring home the win compared to the pace of the Porsches. But will this be his opportunity in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo? Well, with 2.5 minutes to go as we look to Michael Warrington making his way on round there through Curva Grande and up towards the second chicane. We do have to introduce 2 new drivers today, one of whom has been on our league tables charts for some time, and that is Jacko Taylor, who you see here parked up in the pit lane. He'll be racing in the elite class there for UKSimRacing car Mate, and well, we look forward to seeing how the 115 driver gets on in the Porsche. And we also do have in the pro class Dan Blackwell parked up there, the privateer who recently haven't joined the series in the 488 Ferrari, indeed the 488 the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, so matching the numbers there. And well, good luck to the pair of them on their debut in the series tonight. But with an absolutely packed grid, and indeed we show you the overall standings now to give you an idea of how everybody threads the needle in amongst one another. And we have a grand total in attendance of 50 drivers here, and everybody absolutely coming out roaring strong. I think a lot of drivers may have gone with the gamble of not everyone's going to turn up at Monza, and by doing so everybody's decided to turn up at Monza out of our 60 entrants to have what is 50 in attendance, almost 90%. That is very high here, and that goes to show you the commitment, indeed how much this championship means to our drivers, despite the fact that many of them right now will be running on coffee. And well, there was a little bit of controversy down in the paddock in the build-up to tonight with regards to race preparations, the concept of coffee, and more importantly breakfast. And we'll tell you a little bit of tidbit about what we heard down in the paddock after a brief word with regards to our affiliates. Because as we get ready to go into our qualifying session, only 1 minute to go. Did you know that if you've been a supporter and have been enjoying the racing and wondering how you can support UKSimRacing, you can do so also via our affiliates. For UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swallow Meadows Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere, and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, which is uksimracing.co.uk today, and our website will appear, for example, on screen right now, there is a button on the left-hand side, albeit slightly below what's available on screen here. It's in the bottom left-hand corner. You can just about see it, hopefully, and that is our discount stroke affiliate links page. And if you click on that button, you'll be taken to the following page, and you can see logos of our different affiliates there. And if you click on any of those logo images, you'll be able to go to a page where you can make purchases through our affiliates, which result in discounts for you as the consumer and a kickback to us at UKSimRacing. And because we are a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, such as future renditions of the GT3 League, the Porsche Cup, and we've got plenty more planned on the schedule for 2023 at UKSimRacing. And additionally, some of our affiliates provide discount codes which are available in the UKSimRacing Discord, so do remember a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing. But I can tell you also what can go a long way with regards to doing well in racing, and that is a good qualifying lap as we transition into the qualifying session. And well, 15 minutes, everyone will take to that isolated instance of the circuit, and we look to Josh Fletcher as he makes his way out of the pit lane. And we said only moments ago, with regards to there was a little bit of controversy down in the paddock in the build-up to tonight. Now, nothing bad with regards to the organisation of the league or anything along those lines, and perhaps we're over-exaggerating this a little bit, but there was the question in terms of, for a lot of drivers who've taken part in the Daytona 24 hours, well, what have they decided to have for a late breakfast, or indeed say a midday or mid-afternoon breakfast, given that some of their clocks have been turned into nocturnal clocks in order to get themselves set for this race. And there was the mention by one driver of the idea of having a bacon baguette, by a fully cooked fresh bacon baguette, and then the question was, which sauce do you put on the baguette? Do you put ketchup, do you put brown sauce, or do you put something else entirely? And well, the field seems to be quite heavily divided between ketchup and what was brown sauce, but in the end I think the tomato ketchup guys came on out, and then there was the big question of, do you go with Heinz tomato sauce or do you go with Lidl tomato sauce or other types? So you can imagine there, everybody really putting their stakes in the ground with regards to what makes for the perfect topping for a bacon baguette going into a racing experience later on in the day. But as we see there, Stephen Masters going slowly. Now he won't be thinking about tomato ketchup, he'll be thinking about how he can catch up with regards to the pace on the car as he parks up there and makes his way back to the pit lane. But indeed, I think everyone's settled down in the end that tomato sauce is probably the recommended topping, as we do see here Matt Maddox making his way on through, and I can see Medmo saying right now that I'm a barbecue sauce guys, and we can see a number of you in the chat as we say hello to Galactus there, also saying about Heinz 24/7, which is brilliant to see. And what's also brilliant to see is there, I believe that is Jaco Boschoff from Ignium Motorsport letting us know good luck to all the Ignium drivers, and Paul Smith missed his flight from Florida, so won't be in action at Monza. We appreciate the heads up there, Mr. Boschoff, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope the Ignium Motorsport guys had a good time at Daytona. But as we do see here, our driver Matt Maddox making his way on around through the second Lesmo there, and now heading on down the Cerro straight and up towards what is Ascari, roaring on down right now. Well, Maddox, one of many a driver here looking to try and find a good lap on the board today, and indeed right now as all the drivers get set here on their initial warm-up laps, it is going to take a couple of laps to really get the car in the zone, and we are expecting our drivers to be quite sensitive on their first flying lap, because those rear tyres in particular will really need a lot of temperature in them in order to grip up and give our drivers the optimum ability to attack the chicanes. Now in terms of our weather here right now, you can see on the right hand side of your screen, we do have an ambient temperature of 26 degrees centigrade and 29 degrees track temperature at the moment, so quite a moderate temperature. It can be a bit higher of course, and when we do go racing we expect those temperatures to really spike with regards to the track temperature. But right now, with our drivers all taken to an isolated instance, the temperatures are not too high to cause the tyres to become overheated in the first instance. And instead, as Matt Maddox makes his way across the timeline, well, we also do look to sight Anthony making his way on down. Quite fair conditions at the moment, and brilliant sunshine over the circuit as we do simulate mid-morning. And as our drivers make the way around, we see sight Anthony heading to the timeline here to get himself set to go on to a lap, as we also do say hello there to Closet Sim Racer and also BRM Sim Racing. And I can see the source question has really flown over there into the chat. It's brilliant to see you all get involved there as we see Sight Anthony heading onto a lap. So what do you need to do well in a qualifying lap here at Monza? Well, you need to be fully committed. That is the ultimate challenge at the Monza circuit because of the very high average lap speed around here. Indeed, one of the highest average lap speeds of any circuit in the world for road racing, and this circuit is seen as a demonstration of just how fast cars can go, particularly in Formula 1 where they're hitting in excess of what is 200 miles an hour almost in some respects. But as the drivers make their way on around, well, you can imagine here that our drivers right now all set and ready to charge on around. So you need to be brave here. You need to be able to brake as late as possible and know that you can come down that gearbox absolutely aggressively as we see Anti roaring on through the second chicane of Regia. Now on top of that as well, you need to know exactly when you want to get back on the throttle. It's all well and good being able to retard the car under braking into a heavy braking zone, get it stopped and down through the gearbox. But if you can't get back on the power early compared to most, then you're not going to gain lap time. You'll begin to lose it. And that is the second quotient of success here. You need to be, as soon as possible, returning to the throttle pedal and as quickly as possible going from, say, 10 to 20 to 50 to 100%, so that way you can roll your way on down. You can't afford to miss a gear shift, and you need to max it out with regards to the gearbox. You need to know when that peak engine power is and know when to upshift as well. And as we see Anthony making his way through Ascari, the third thing you need is to know the balance of the car. Making your way through chicanes, it's a direction change, and that can really unsettle the machinery with regards to that weight transfer, particularly in the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars where they've got all that weight in the rear of the car, such as the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, which we're seeing anti-pilot on around right now, and bringing that all together is where the perfect lap comes on in. Of course, if we had all the drivers out of the circuit, they'd also be looking to get slipstream draft off of one another, but that's not to be, and therefore they've got to do it under their own impetus, as we see Anti come into the timeline here on his first flying lap. What's it going to be for the Symphony Esports driver as he crosses on through? It is going to be a very nice lap from Anti, a 47.79. That puts him provisional P2 overall as all the times pile on in. But as times are starting to come on in, we see Darren Sharples making his way down into Ascari here. And very shortly, we will be riding on board with Sharples, your AM Championship leader, for a reference lap here as he comes on through and true and making his way up towards the right-hander at turn number 11. As we're hearing that Joshua Pratt is going very fast at the moment. He's gone purple. In fact, as we briefly lose Sharples there, a little bit of a connection issue as he head on down, and hopefully that is not a sign of something to come potentially with regards to his connection fading in and out of existence over the course of the racing, because that could be a sign of an upcoming technical issue. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 1, we are right on board here with Sharples and giving on board lap in the Huracan Evo GT3. Making his way up through the gearbox in 6th gear, in top gear right now, and looking to his left-hand side for his brake marker, which will be around the 150 metre board, and braking all the way down from 164 miles an hour, down from 6th to 1st gear, clatters over the first 2 apex curves, and then powers out, goes a little bit too high on the second curve, however, and you can see that's forced the car wide with a bit of understeer, so he does take to the gravel with 2 wheels, and has to power the car on through, and now makes his way through Curva Grande, we're heading up towards Regia. Now rolling his way on through, he'll let the car just gradually come out to the corner and look to his right hand side for his brake marker and looking to brake there at the start of the Marshall's post, braking just before the 100 metre wall, coming down the second gear, flying between the 2 curves there, straight line and powering on out of the second chicane, and now into the 2 Lesmos. Into Lesmo 1 he goes, braking there at approximately what is 40 metres of corner apex, dropping the 3rd gear, trailing the car in, and then using the runoff area there to settle the car before powering into Lesmo 2, and looking to his 50 metre board there, braking down from 4th to 3rd gear. Some drivers may drop to 2nd depending on the gear ratio of the car, and as he powers on down, Seraglio now up for the gearbox once again, full throttle at this point, going up into 5th, shortly heading towards 6th gear as he gets ready to brake into Ascari, and as he continues to power on down here, will now get himself set as he rolls it off, and in fact backing the car off there and coming down the gearbox and resetting the lap as he heads to Ascari, so he's not going to go full attack here this time. Instead, Sharples deciding to cool it down and get himself set for one more lap, as he makes his way up towards Parabolica curve here. We'll finish with this on-board lap just to give you an idea of the perspective, and we may try and catch another lap right towards the end of this session as he heads towards the final corner and now fully commits once again, braking there at the 50 board, coming all the way down to 3rd gear, and now powering out, goes a little bit deep initially but brings it on back together, and now Sharples will give it one more go as he heads on through to the timeline. But indeed an aborted lap there, he lifted off into Ascari to settle the car on down, and as he makes his way on across the line, currently P25, and well, what does that translate to in class? Well, let's show you the class standings. It translates to P3 currently in class, but he is 4.5 tenths off of Warrington, who is the fastest driver. But it is a Ferrari on provisional pole in the AM class, as we do briefly lose Sharples once again. Meanwhile, in the elite class, well, it's not Martin Tillin on pole currently, it's Hakon Gestad in the McLaren, but it is a McLaren that's right up there on a 47.727, and in the pro class, it is the BMW M4 of Alex Gaines, as we still do have just under half the qualifying session left to go. But as we do see here, Martin Tillin making his way on down, currently P12, 12. And well, the McLaren, a very interesting car around here because it makes up a huge amount of its lap time on corner exit with regards to being able to carry a lot more speed compared to other cars, but it does suffer a little bit on the straights at the very top end. Depends on how much rear wing is being run by the driver, but the McLaren, one of those cars which is very sensitive on that rear end, and well, you imagine that Tilling here will be absolutely trying to make sure that rear end stays stapled to the ground as he carries the power on through, but as he makes his way on down towards turn number 1 once again. Does he improve that time around? No, he does not. Meanwhile, speaking of improvements that are incoming, James Connolly comes to the timeline, and well, there his livery starting to load on in, and Connolly makes it across the line. And what's it going to be for the Ferrari driver here? Yet to put a time on the board, and well, I think that time was invalid as well, so James Connolly yet to get a time on. In fact, we do have 8 drivers who've yet to get a time on, and that is Casper Brotner, David Larson, Aaron McGregor, Stuart Brown, Damien Lobbett, James Connolly, Brock Freites, and Dion Wren. So a lot of drivers right now still need to find that time out there. But meanwhile, the one driver who's found all the time in the world is the Ignium Motorsport driver of Håkon Gestad, who is currently overall pole and elite pole on a 47.314 as he makes his way down towards Ascari here. And in the roar he goes, and that McLaren, it may be old compared to the more modern 650S and 720S, but you cannot deny that MP4 12C still roaring on through, whipped by Turbo V8 as he makes his way on through, flames spitting out the rear of the car as he drops down the gearbox and heads on through Ascari, and looking absolutely perfect there with regards to that. This is his 4th and final lap, so he is looking to improve even further as he makes his way in towards Parabolica shortly. And well, the number 37 driver right now, as he comes on through the right-hander, he's only improved in subsector 4, and as he comes through the final subsector here to complete the lap, can he find a bit more time? I mean, he's going to be very hard-pressed to beat his personal best, given the fact that he is right now almost 5 tenths faster than the rest of the field. But Gestad here really putting the pressure on as he comes across the line. Does he improve? No, he does not. But meanwhile, one driver who has improved is Colin Patterson from Tiki Simsport as he makes his way across the line. But Håkon Gestad retires back to the pit lane, having delivered his qualifying laps. And Gestad, I think, will feel more than confident enough that he has got overall pole by an absolutely phenomenal margin, and almost half a second here at Monza. Well, that is unheard of, and for Gestad right now, he's definitely making the statement. But as they come on around here, time is ticking down. 4 minutes to go. A lot of our drivers have completed their qualifying session. You will see a majority of our drivers are in the pit lane already, and that's the signal that their session is over. But we do still have a couple who are making their final laps, and some who decided to space those laps out. Colin Patterson right now on his final qualifying lap. But elsewhere, who else do we have coming on to a lap very shortly? Well, we do have what is, we're just checking our timing at the moment, Nathan Foster coming on through the final corner, iRacing driver, and in fact we'll ride on board with Nathan Foster for a complete lap as he comes on out in the Audi R8. But making his way across the timeline very shortly in the R8 LMS machine, dating back to 2015 of course. He heads down towards the braking zone for turn number 1, and here we'll see, much like the previous lap, having to go full throttle all the way towards the braking zone. Looks to his left there for his brake marker and braking at that 150 metre board, coming all the way down the gearbox, slamming it down through the gear, through the sequential shifts, and as he makes way through turn 2, that's how you get over the curve at turn 2. You notice they're getting the left tyre completely hooked over it, and it rolled the car around and then got back on the power by dropping off the curve and now making his way through Curva Grande. A nice start to that, coming through Bratislava, and now making his way up towards Regia through Curva Grande as he makes his way up towards the brake zone, looks to his right hand side here, looks at the marshal's post and braking at the 100 metre board, going all in. He's going to carry a lot of speed and just gets it stopped in time as Dan Blackwell has taken provisional pole in the Pro class there with 47.980, and we'll talk more about it in a brief moment as we focus here on the iRacing driver's lap as he rolls his way on through. Nathan Foster right now pushing it to the limit, and Lesmo 1 coming into Lesmo 2, drops to 3rd, takes a bit of apex curve, not as much apex curve there compared to other corners because it's a high curve and he'll unsettle the car if he gets too high on it. The only cars that can really take that aggressively in terms of the curve are the BMWs and the Mercedes, depending on the setup. And as he makes his way down Cerro Clio, heading onto the brakes very shortly. Now into Ascari here. This is a beautiful lap so far. Breaks the 100 metre board at the marshal's post to his right hand side. Clatters over the turn 8 curve. Brings it onto turn 9. Powers on through there. A nice line up to 4th gear. Mid apex at turn number 10. To help settle the car as he powers up the gearbox up into 5th. And up into 6th. And so far has improved in subsector 3. But otherwise matching him with previous best sectors as he heads towards the final corner. as he gets ready to go into Parabolica, braking on down here, brings the car in nice and early, gets on the curb there, powers out, a little bit of hesitancy on the throttle, taking a bit too much curb, and just there decides to nurse the car, brings it over to the right hand side. He thinks he's improving in Nathan Foster as he comes to the timeline. What's it going to be as he comes on across, currently in what is P13 in the elite class, and in the end, is it an improvement? I don't think it is. As he crosses the line, he stays P13 in class, and meanwhile, still on a lap here, one more to go, is debutant Dan Blackwell, and will right now, unless Chris Eddersford can pull some magic out and gain 8/10 approximately over his final lap. Blackwell, who's on his own final lap right now with a 47.980, has put himself 1.5 tenths clear of championship leader Alex Gaines, and the Ferrari driver here may have just got the job done as he just about keeps him in track limits there. 2 wheels just slightly inside the white lines. That's as far as you could go as he comes to the timeline. We improved in subsector 4, but 2 tenths down his previous best. But I think Blackwell's got it done, as meanwhile Chris Eddersford heads on around here, and well, I think in fact Eddersford's qualifying session is done and dusted. The only one left to go is Mark Johnson, who's on a valid lap as he makes his way through the final corner here in the Lamborghini Huracan as he comes to line, currently P10. He crosses the line, 8.5 tenths down previously on Warrington's pole lap in the AM class. Does Johnson improve? No, he does not. And well, with that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and what a qualifying session it has been. In fact, it's not quite complete yet, but scratch the thought there, we do still have one driver headed back out onto circuit, and that is Peter Cox, who makes his way around, albeit with 30 seconds to go. He's not got long, but currently in the elite class, it's provisional pole. In fact, it's confirmed pole position to what is Hakon Gristad by 4 tenths in over Cy Anthony. In the pro class, it's 1.5 tenths that pole is taken by Dan Blackwell over Alex Gaines, and in the AM class, it is Michael Warrington who by 400ths takes pole position in a Ferrari shootout between himself and Brock Wright. The Ferrari's looking strong in the pro and the AM classes, and also looking quite strong in the elite class, but definitely right now it's a mix of cars up towards the front. We head over to the grid then for our sprint race for today. So this is how they line up on the grid for round number 3 of 8 in the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 9. It is Hakon Gristad who takes overall pole position, elite pole position now on a 47.314 for Ignium Motorsport, joined on the front row by the privateer of Cy Anthony. Row number 2 consists of Joe Newman and Joshua Pratt, followed up by Martin Tillian and Dan Blackwell. Dan Blackwell's lap putting him at P6 on the grid there in the pro class, and that is pro pole. Austin William Campbell there, P7 in the Ford GT. Keep your eyes out for the Symphony Esports Black driver, who starts off the full throw alongside Jacko Taylor on his debut for Tiki Simsport Car Marte. And then we have Matthew Crisp and Josh Fletcher who complete the top 10. Behind them, we then have on row number 6 the pair of Alex Gaines and Daniel Lee, followed up by what is the pairing of Dean Powell and Sam Congreve on row 7. Row 8 goes to Nathan Foster and Ryan Davies, with Michael Warrington and John Eddowes on the 9th row, and Michael Warrington, your pole sitter in the AM class there, 1 second off the overall pole lap. We then have completing the top 20 on row number 10, Sean Valandia and Brock Freight, with Ryan Moles and Stephen Masters on row 11, and row 12 going to David Lowison and Frank Klein. Behind them on the grid in row at number 13, we do have what is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Aaron McGregor and Darren Sharples. We just get an update on our timing there, followed up by Peter Cox and Chris Edderson on number 14. That's row number 14. And as we continue on down the grid, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe we have a slight glitch with regards to our grid, and we can't continue our way down the grid currently. And I believe there we do, well, in fact, we are compounded to only see the first 28 cars on the grid, and I believe that is a technical issue that we can't resolve. But what we can tell you is then making our way on further down the grid, and we will do it looking at the field as they all line up. We do then have what is the pairing of Stuart Brown and Jaco Boschov, who will be starting at P29 and P30 on what is there the 15th row. And as we continue on down on the 16th row, we have Nathan Scott and Eden Frazina, followed by the pairing of what is Jeff Griffiths and Edward Knight. That's on the 17th row. And then on the 18th row, it is Matt Maddox and Daniel Pays, as the gridding process is complete and the field are getting ready to go. And then we do have Colin Patterson and Adrian Garcia on row number 19, followed by Mark Johnson and Casper Brotner on row number 20. Then it is Tom Farr and Jack Bullen on row 21, with Thomas Barjack and Brian Gonzalez on row 22, followed up by Richard Curry and Adrian Kukulis on row 23. And then we do have Simon Hartley and James Connolly on row 24, Dion Renner, Mark Collicott on row 25. And in fact, last but not least, on a lonely 26th row, not taken to the grid, it is Damien Lobbett. I believe there are technical issues with Lobbett's car, and and therefore we will not be seeing him take to the field today. But as we get ready to go, and we have tried to walk you down as much of the grid as humanly possible, we do go back to the class standards there. We'll look into that technical issue for next time out, of course. We try to get things resolved as soon as possible, but technical issues do blight us today. But what's not going to blight us here is an absolutely fantastic round of racing action. Indeed, it's a treat for the eyes, and as the pace car gets underway there and all the drives make the way down towards the final corner, well, it is going to be the long charge to the line, and Håkon Gestad will determine when our drives go to the green. Oh, goodness me, there's already a car into the wall there, and is that Sam Congreve has spun into the wall on what is the formation line as he makes his way on down. Indeed, the partial formation lap, and it's gone very wrong for Sam Congreve. He has to filter his way on through, and that's going to split the field up quite considerably, but we're not quite sure exactly how that happened. I think just a little bit of weaving going a bit too far, but for Congreve it's gone so horribly wrong that can Håkon Gestad get it so right as he heads to the line, and we'll wait the green. And he goes immediately. Håkon Gestad goes. It's lights out, and we are away for round number 3 of 8 at Monza today as Gestad gets the launch up the line. Meanwhile, Joe Newman immediately having to cut across the defend against Joshua Pratt as they head into the braking zone for turn number 1. It's going to be 50 cars roaring onto the brakes since the opening couple of corners, and who is going to avoid any potential moments? 2 by 2 they all go, and we've got any free wides building. We have a little bit further back as we see that Sam Congreve trying to squeeze into the mix, but everyone comes on through so far. Everybody coming on the brakes. Oh no! And it's all gone horribly wrong as it's a traffic jam in the run to turn number 2. A car sideways, and Sam Congreve, I think, they're sideways on the apex of turn number 2. Congreve's day could not go from good to bad tonight, it's to worse, and there's still more happening at turn number 2. There's 2 cars round, and I believe that's Adrian Kukulis and also Thomas Barjak who've both been turned, and well, as they get themselves pointing in the right direction. Meanwhile, one driver who's pointing in the right direction from the outset and he's still holding on to lead. It's Håkon Gestad as they come up to the Lesbos, but as he makes his way through Lesbo 1 and Lesbo 2, further back Matthew Crisp, they're gaining considerably 3 places gained since the start of this race, but as he comes roaring through the right hand and now down the Cerro straight he goes. We can see here everyone now starting to form into formation in terms of line astern as they make their way down towards turn number 8. Now as they head on down, we've got one driver going a bit slowly. That's Martin Tillin, I believe, who's battling with Alex Gaines. Gaines depends on the inside, and Tillin very close, too close for comfort some would say, but Tillin right now trying to put the pressure on. He can't find a way on through, and of course Tillin in the elite class chasing after the pro driver, the pro second place driver, as they make the way up towards Parabolica Curve, but in the charge they go, and as they make the way towards turn number 11, well, the concertina effect definitely applied into turn 1. But it went so wrong for so many, but meanwhile as they head on through and onto the brakes, we saw Dan Blackwell there taking a little peek at Austin William Campbell, but meanwhile Sean Valandia caught up here behind Ryan Davies in the battle for P13 in the elite class. But as they make the way on through, a bit further up the road there you can see Dean Powell battling side by side here in the Ferrari versus Nathan Foster. Foster on the left of your picture, Powell on the right of your picture, behind them is Daniel Lee, and as they make the way side by side in the run down towards turn number 1, they go on to lap number 2, Daniel Lee brings it to the inside, it's going to be 3 wide, 2 Ferraris either side of the Audi, Lee on the inside there, Powell on the right, and then you have Nathan Foster in the middle, and well, they both go around Foster, but in there Dean Powell gets a good run through the chicane, but it's not over yet as they make the way in the charge up towards Curva Grande, and now Foster has to choose the side as they make the way through the right hand, and you can see here how Powell bringing himself into the tire. Josh Fletcher has had an abysmal run coming out of turn number 2. They almost go 4 wide at a distant view here into the chicane, and as they come onto the brakes, Fletcher going very slow, they're back in the car entirely, and Lee gets ahead. Meanwhile, Fletcher picking his way in behind what is Michael Warrington as Daniel Lee makes sure to make a statement which he's coming through the field whether they like it or not. And meanwhile we can see here that it's going wrong for Fletcher, but meanwhile for Michael Warrington, who started on pole in the AM class, he's had the perfect start. He's gained 1 place overall, and he's got 6 places, well in fact 4 places between himself and next AM driver of Brock Freites as they make the way on through turn number 6. But as they head up towards turn 7 and 8, in fact they're coming down towards 8 now, you see our drivers here all very close together, still the roar of the engines of course, as they make the way up towards Ascari for once more, and as they make the way down to the brakes, we'll further back Chris Edisford here, you can see in a bit of a scuffle versus Aaron McGregor, and McGregor there, the AM driver, not giving him right now, and Chris Edisford's going to have to try and find his way on circuit around his rival, albeit across 2 different classes here, and we'll for Edison right now. He has got McGregor and Concrete between himself and Peter Cox, his next rival in the Pro class. But as they make the way on out there of turn number 10, we look a bit further back. James Conley here, who's had a great start, gained 5 places in class at the very start of this race, now continues to make his way up through the order as he now charges after Simon Hartley. We will try and get a replay of what exactly happened on that opening lap at what was the opening chicane of Rettvilio. But meanwhile, Ryan Gonzalez there under pressure from Tom far up the inside, and Far, the pro driver here, trying to get on through, but he overcooks it there slightly under braking, and Gonzalez does not give in here as they make the way out of Parabolica Curve and down towards turn number 1 they go. And now it's going to be the battle of the Audi engine in the back of the Lamborghini versus the 6-cylinder beast of the BMW. You can see they're fast, starting to gain a little bit more speed, just able to increment a little bit more top end as they get ready to battle on the brakes. Meanwhile, we've got a little bit of an instant further up the field here. We've got 3. Oh, goodness me! And it's gone wrong. Sharples and Garcia come together, and Sharples return Garcia apart there. Doesn't let the car roll any further back, the Spaniard for Team Zor. But I think there's a bit more to it than meets the eye there. As meanwhile, Sharples now finds himself dropping down the order. And well, this is not the way you'll want to bring home a win today. And I think he may be starting to be denied another win on the third time of trying. Whereas they make the way down towards turn number 4 into Regia they go. Left, right, roaring through. We can see here Darren Sharples with some wounds on the front bumper of that Lamborghini. Now we'll have to deal with a loss of straight line speed there with the aerodynamic damage as he makes his way into Lesmo 1. But as he comes on through the right-hander, we look from them to a bit further up the field, and we look up to Martin Tilling here, running P6 in the elite class, P8 overall, as he chases after Alex Gaines in front of him. But as we ride on board the gearbox here of Tilling, look what's behind there. There's only one of them in the field, and it's a unique one. It's a Ford GT, and it's being piloted by Austin William Campbell here, who sits well within the zone of attacking Tilling as Tilling goes a bit deep. They make their way on through Parabolica Curve, and now this is where the Ford GT gets to shine. It's got so much straight line speed packed into that frame, and as they make their way down towards turn 1, the McLaren's no slouch either, and it's going to be about who's going to be the bold on the brakes here. Will it be the beast from Ford that makes its way out on the left-hand side of our picture, or will it be the delicate McLaren as they make their way into the braking zone? Austin William Campbell's not going to back out, and neither is Martin Tilling, the TE6 corporate driver here. Tries to hang around outside to inside, and as they come on through, they give each other space, but Austin William Campbell just goes a little bit wide, and the Civic Esports black driver now has to contest the fact that Jacko Taylor's trying to go around the outside as they make their way through the right-hander at turn number 3, and you can see behind Daniel Lee getting into the mix as well, looking at this race and live round thinking, okay, I can play the game as well, as they make their way in towards Regia. Now onto the brakes they go once more, but all in the line here, all of them knowing that one little battle could drop them off in the next driving sequence as they make their way through turns 4 and 5 and up towards 6. Now as they come on through into the right-hander of Lesmo 1, they settle down for a brief moment. But meanwhile, speaking of not settling down, we look to Joe Newman here in the Simam racing red Audi as he in P3 right now tries to chase after Science in front, but more pressing for him is fellow Audi driver Joshua Pratt behind. 2.5 tenths separates the pair as they make their way past the marshal's post there and into turn number 8, going into Ascari, and well, they're both tucked in at behind Sight Ansys. Meanwhile, Hakon Gestad is just running away with this in the lead right now. He is not holding back at all. Well, I think right now the Norwegian driver is thinking one thing and one thing only, which is you have got to gap the field as much as possible, because of course we saw at Daytona just how powerful the slipstream was in terms of fuel saving, where drivers were gaining up to 5 seconds in the draft of another driver in terms of time saved in refueling the car in the pits, and therefore for Gestad, he's got to go, and there's no holding back. But of course, when you're running that high and under such intense pressure, you can only run at 100% so long before a mistake creeps in, or you do have to back it off. And how long can Gustad continue to run that pace clear of the field? Meanwhile, we see here Sight Anthony really acts as a little bit of a slipstream barge with regards to the 2 Audis behind as they all settle in. Nobody wants to make the move here and disrupt the status quo as they come through. Further back, Martin Tilling here under a bit of pressure still from Austin William Campbell, as meanwhile Dean Powell there, and Martin Tilling goes straight on as he locks up the brakes. Dean Powell the inside there as Sean Valanian gets the move done, and as they make the way on through, coming out of Rettvilio and out towards Cova Grande they go. Tilling rejoins, albeit he's going to drop away back as everybody now switches places, and you can see there Valendia coming on through versus his TE SimSport sister team driver, as right now the TE SimSport Kimi driver retakes P10 and makes his way up towards what is the Regia chicane. But onto the brakes, and meanwhile Ryan Davies a little bit further back, being passed there by Nathan Foster as Foster comes on through, and as they make the way on through Regia and now head up towards the 2 Lesbos, they all settle back down again. Meanwhile, it's getting a bit nip and tucked further down the order here in the battles between the pros and the AMs within their class and also between classes as they're all stepping on one another's toes. An example of this with two Lamborghinis running together, but it's Daniel Payes, the AM driver running P5 in class at the head of this pair, ahead of the pro driver Jeff Griffiths, and the privateer Griffiths right now trying to find his way on through because he does have a 4-second deficit to Stuart Brown ahead of him, but as they make the way out there, we look to Jakob Boscher a little bit wide there, coming on through turn number 6, and right now got a bit of pressure on Mark Kolikoff and DCW Racing behind for the Evening Motorsports bar drivers. We've got a driver off, that's Matt Maddox, who has decided to go a little bit wide there. Now, was there a bit of contact from the car of Casper Brotner in front? We're not sure about that. There was too wide for a brief moment, but I wondered if the BDM Racing driver was going away of his own volition. We can't quite tell you, but meanwhile, what we can tell you, it's 2x2 coming into Ascari. They're all trying to squirt the position here. It's all between the pros as Boschoff holds off. Mark Collicott and Colin Patterson there stays in line as they make the way on out. And right now, Boschoff here trying to break away, but the thing is, when he's got two Lamborghinis and an Audi behind, they're all powered by the same engine, of course, albeit there, I think the aerodynamics of Dion Wren's car will not be aiding with that crumpled rear wing as they make the way up towards turn number 11. But all four of these drivers right now are really trying to push the tempo, as meanwhile, further up the road, we can see here, it's the rise of Lamborghinis a bit further up the field with Jeff Griffiths, and a battle his way past Daniel Payes. It's Griffiths on the inside on the left here, picture Payes on the right, and behind them, they have Edward Knight, who's trying to push on as well, as right now Griffiths tries to create a door, and meanwhile Knight is going to try and squeeze on through with him, as they make the way into the braking zone for Red's video, but Payes, they're not giving up, and as they make the way on through, well, Payes has to release in the end, but as they make the way out of the corner, further back, Matt Maddox here under attack from Richard Curie. And Curie right now going for the move there in the BMW M4, but he can't quite find it to take P7 in the AM class of a Maddox. And Maddox, after that moment coming out of Lesbo 2, right now free falling through the field, and he's trying to stop the tide as he makes his way into Glover Grander. 10 minutes in, it's still 35 minutes to go, and definitely the battling right now at its highest intensity it has been all season. That's saying something, of course, given how intense the battles have been in the first two rounds, but right now we're seeing it go to an all-new threshold. But Curie on the inside there, and Maddox, he tries to shut the door, but Curie gets in, he has to take plenty of apex go, gives the space to Richard Curie, and Curie there gets it done inside to outside. Brilliant battling between the pair of them. Behind you see Ryan Gonzalez getting into the mix, and then Darren Sharples there on a recovery drive, P10 in the AM class, now trying to fight his way up through the field. Now as they make the way on through into Lesbo 2, coming through the right hand, do we get a brief opportunity to tell you about what exactly happened at the start, or try to discern what happened at the start? I believe we may do, and in fact we get to take a look back at what happened between Darren Sharples and A.G. Garcia. Well, this was in the run down towards what was turn number 1, and this was on lap number 3. They made the way through the corner. That's Maddox on the inside. Maddox in the contact with Sharples, and in return that kicked off the whole chain reaction, and then Sharples getting up to speed, contact again with Garcia, and that's how the two drivers ended up seeing the wall and coming together. And oh goodness me, the Ignition Motorsport car there had to take very late evasive action to Sharples, who just tried to get himself pointed in the right direction and out the way. But as we return to live pictures, more happening. Sam Congreve battling on the inside here. Oh, what is Stephen Masters, and getting the battle done for P15 in the elite class. But of course, Sam Congreve having a nightmare start to his day, and we try to find out what exactly happened to Sam Congreve on the opening lap. Well, I believe we are going to get what is a replay of exactly happened, and here it is. Now making the way in the run down, of course, Sam Congreve, the spin in the run up towards 11 on the formation lap. Now coming under brake, and look at the concertina effect. Everybody having to stop there, and well, he came into the back of a car that was already parked, and then everybody just speared their way into the back. Obviously, everyone had to react on the brakes, but when you've got a total of 20 cars behind, it's very hard to stop the car, and we return to live pictures there, but it went wrong for quite a few drivers. We're not quite sure who started off the sequence, but what we can tell you is with everything that happened there, well, now we return to live pictures here, and we will continue to watch the story unfold. But meanwhile, well, we continue to watch the story unfold, and Matt Maddox finding himself in the wars once again, and Richard Curie, I believe, has also been the victim of a bit of contact between the two of them. Now they're both victims of coming together. Is it a racing incident? Well, that's the question that is ponderous right now, but as they make the way on around, we will try to find out exactly what happened very shortly, and in fact, we do have a quick replay coming up. Well, here is the replay of the battle between what was Maddox and Curie. Now, we can see Matt Maddox there behind Richard Curie under braking. I wonder if, well, Curie's lost the rear end of the car, gone round, and Maddox the same. And I think Maddox may have just reacted on the brake there a bit prematurely, not knowing what the Team Zor driver was going to do in terms of the way his car was behaving. So neither driver actually in contact there, just the lead driver, Curie, having a spin, and Maddox there spinning in reaction to it. But as we now come back to live pictures, we look back to the battle for P2 at the front of the field and in the elite class here, and it's between Joshua Pratt and Cy Anthony. Pratt has got ahead in the run to turn number 1, but they're still battling in the draft here in the run to turn number 4, and as they make the way into Regia, Pratt is ahead, and Cy Anthony now having to play the game. Or does he defend versus the Audi behind, or does he go on the offensive versus the Audi in front? Of course, the challenge here is, with regards to that situation, is if you defend versus the guy behind, the guy in front of you breaks away. Conversely, if you go on the offensive versus the guy in front, the guy behind you may just find his way up your inside. And for Cy Anthony right now, really, he's got to try and find a balancing act here. But what do you do? And I would say if Cy Anthony finds himself being heavily pressured by Newman, it may be ideal for him to let Newman pass and just sit behind the two Audis. He can gain race time by running their draft, and particularly strategy time when it comes with regards to the fuel as he goes into the pits later on. Now, we are expecting, given the run of form that we saw in rounds 1 and 2 at Silverstone, Daytona respectively, that the fuel tanks will take our drivers in the region to 22 to 30 minutes into the race, depending on fuel saving and whether they're trying to undercut or overcut or just split the race into 2 parts. But meanwhile, we see there Joe Newman trying to look for the move, running on through, but he can't do it, and instead as the backed out flow back, Martin Tilling here being given a little bit of a bump draft there by, I think that's Joshua Fletcher behind on the inside of Foster and Fletcher, and also Tilling coming on through, roaring in. Fletcher does not back off onto the racing line there as Tilling returns to the racing line, clear of the car of which David Foster, as they make the way out. This is the battle for P8 in the elite class as they make the way out of turn number 11 and on towards the timeline. They go on to a 9th lap in anger under race conditions as they come roaring on through. Well, time right now is tricking down slowly, and for some drivers they may be hoping time would go faster. With the amount of racing we're seeing right now, we can't get enough of this as they make the way down in towards Rettavilo once again. But heading onto the brakes, they all stay in line, and as they come on through, a bit further back, Dean Powell there takes a cheeky look up the inside of Ryan Davies. He can't quite find it and has to back out instead as they make the way of the brakes. And meanwhile, it's gone very wrong for Mark Johnson further back, as it's gone quite wrong now. I believe that may be for Brock Freites who's gone. Well, no, that's not Brock Freites. The exact here is Brock Freites. He is returning to circuit right now, but the Tiki Simsport driver there has got it wrong at the opening chicane. Went across the grass there to avoid being involved in a further incident with any other driver. And well, for the AM driver right now, he's still P2 in class, but Warrington is running away. And to give you an idea of where Michael Warrington is, as we see there, Nathan Scott taking a look up the inside. He goes very late on the brakes as Nathan Scott. But you can imagine that, you can understand Nathan Scott saying, no, I need to go after Chris Edison. Thank you, Brock. I want to go on through whether you like it or not. And as they make the way into Lesbo 1, well, Michael Warrington right now, Freight is down in P24 overall to give you the pitch here. Meanwhile, Warrington is up in P14. He is absolutely flying. And here's the Tiki Simsport Carl Marte driver, who is right now in the tow of John Eddowes ahead of him and putting pressure on the P3 Pro driver as they make the way on through Ascari. But of course, the Tiki Simsport drivers will try to work together, albeit they're not in the identical team. They are in sub-teams of one another. But you can imagine here, they won't try and trip over one another and let one another race, particularly when they're not in the same class. But as they make the way down towards turn number 11, we do look from them to much further down in the field to what is Frank Klein here. And well, you can see Klein in the Tiki Simsport Cooper machine as he makes his way on down the back straight, heading up towards Ascari through Sierra Clio. And as he comes on down, he finds himself between Simon Hartley and Richard Curie. And well, they're Hartley in the Audi, just keeping it on the straight and narrow with 5 tenths between them and a 6 tenths of advantage gap there to Curie. As we see, Klein goes a little bit deep into the first part of Ascari, and that is going to compromise his exit line as he comes out 9 into 10. Curie takes a bit too much momentum out of 10, almost runs tragically wide, but keeps it just in track limits in the end. And as they make the way up towards 11, when we say tragically wide there, of course, because there's very little grip beyond the road surface, that runoff area, it's deceptively in its nature with regards to the fact that it offers some grip, but nowhere near as much as the actual track surface. And with the marbles out, their cars can go for a spin. But meanwhile, Klein here carrying on and chasing down Hartley, and well, Hartley pulls it over to the left-hand side. And I think now Klein's going to look for the move here on his fellow Tiki Simsport driver, battling side by side. They go, a bit of contact between the two of them there. No love lost between the pair, as it's going to be Klein on the left of your picture as the camera spins round. He outbrakes his Audi rival, onto the anchors he goes, and he gains P11 in the AM class there off of Hartley as they make the way out of Rettavilo and up towards Regia they go. Meanwhile, Colin Patterson here trying to put pressure, with that being pressured by Jakob Boschov as they make the way up towards Rogier chicane. And as they come through turns 4 and 5, left, right they go, coming on out. And as he heads up towards the first Lesbo, the 737 driver in this pack of Lamborghinis right now. And well, it really is the Lamborghini army in this battle for what is P10 in the Pro class. We can see there Boschov and Tom Farr. And Tom Farr, this should be pointed out, has come all the way from what is P41 on the grid up to P35 already. He's gained 1 place in class, 6 overall, and now he finds himself in a freeway battle to get inside the top 10 and really push on as the privateer as he makes his way down Seraglio. But as he heads on through and up towards Ascari, well, right now the odds seem to be even with regards to these 3 drivers. No finding their way on through one another, but as they make the way in towards what is turn number 11 very shortly, well, making the way on out at the moment. And well, do we see there anything else happening a little bit further up in the Pro class? Well, we do have Peter Cox here, who right now in P5 as he makes his way inwards towards turn number 1, heading on down towards the braking zone. He goes, and will there be any change here between the drivers? Well, Cox has got some pressure there, building from Edison, who looks up the inside, and in fact that's Stephen Masters there, who Peter Cox is going past. We should clarify, but Cox goes a bit deep, and as he comes on through there, Edison's still a little bit further back, but the UKSimRacing driver gets the move done as they make the way out of turns 1 and 2 and down towards 4 they roar. But as they make the way on around through Curva Grande, further up the road, Joshua Pratt here on the inside. With that on the inside of him is Joe Newman, and Newman there battles it into Lesbo 2, and as they make the way through the right-hander, Pratt is passed as we ride on board with the Tiki Sim Sport Toa driver. Now building up the speed here in the run down Seraglio and heading up towards turn number 10. Well, the challenge here for Pratt in the Tiki Sim Sport Toa car is he's been passed, but what does that exactly mean for him now in terms of his race? Does he decide that he's got to try and get that P3 back, or conversely, does he let the car fall back? But notice how Cy Anthony, after getting back ahead of this pair, has now started to open up a gap, and these two squabbling for position. It's dropped them to almost a whole second back of a Cy Anthony. Now the tow zone off the back of these GT3s, it starts about 2 seconds. It's a very gradual build up a tow up to 1 second's distance, and then it really starts to hit hard. And that's the thing, these two cannot afford to let Cy Anthony get into his own field of the race circuit in terms of breaking out to about 1.5 seconds, because then they'll find themselves losing the option to chase down P2, and instead they'll be battling for P3 from start to finish. But as they make the way across the timeline in towards another lap they go. Well, Pratt, they're falling back a little bit. I think now deciding to conserve rather than go on the offensive, because Dan Blackwell, who right now leading in the Pro class here only by 1 second, it should be pointed out, over rival Alex Gaines. But the delta here is the fact that they do have Matthew Crisp, the elite driver, between them, and Matthew Crisp here in the 97 car enjoying a great run of form here today so far, and really one of the biggest gainers in the elite class at the start of the race, gaining 3 places in class position over the duration of the opening couple of laps. And since then he's been between the 2 pros. He's been a bit of a referee in terms of this fight, and he's keeping them at bay from one another. But as they make the way in towards what is Regia here onto the brakes, so you can imagine for what is Crisp, he'll now be looking to try and make his way past Blackwell, or will he decide that Blackwell's running on an optimum pace and therefore just sit behind? But as they make the way through the right-hander, turn number 6 and up towards 7, coming up roaring on through. Well, we do look there to Nathan Foster a little bit further back down the order in P10 for Simran Racing Blue, trying to right now make a move on Josh Fletcher, and these two have been attached to one another for a long time in terms of battling. Of course, earlier it was Foster ahead of Fletcher, but meanwhile further back we've got a bit of a coming together here between AJ Garcia on one side and James Conley on the other, and Conley on the left as the camera looks to make it way towards Curva Grande. Garcia on the right for Team Zor, and as they make their way through the right-hander, this started in the run to Retzvilo, and it's going to end in the run to Regia, but who is going to come out on top? And you can see that the Ferrari of Conley just inching a nose ahead as they get ready to go into the braking zone, but the Lamborghini comes on back, and Garcia's not letting this go as they make their way left into right. And now as he gets ahead there, Conley goes a little bit deep, and Garcia retakes P8 in the AM class there, digging in and saying to Conley, you're going to have to do more than that if you want it. And as they make their way through Lesbo 1 right now, heading towards the midpoint of this race, still plenty of time to go, but strategy will begin to take a bigger notion in this race compared to early on. As I think most of our drivers now, if they haven't settled into their positions, they will be forced to do so soon, given the fact that they've not got long until those fuel tanks start to look red in their visor. But meanwhile, as they make their way down Seraglio, we've got more battling up front, as we see here Joshua Pratt finding himself side by side, a bit of contact there with Dan Blackwell. Matthew Crisp will capitalise on this. This is going to be a drag race between Crisp and the Lamborghini on the right, your picture, and what will be their Blackwell on the left. And as they make the way through Curva Grande they go, roaring up towards Regia, and as they make the way in towards that braking zone, well, Chris backs out again, and it looks as though we're here with a little bit of an elbow from Pratt towards Blackwell. I think the two, they're sizing one another up, and I think Blackwell wanted to get a bit further up the order, and you can understand from Blackwell's perspective, he wants to put as many elite drivers as possible between himself and Alex Gaines, who is showing no signs of being able to shrug off. As they come into Lesbo 1, well, it's calmed down for now, but can Blackwell find a way to jump a bit further up the order? As meanwhile, Martin Tillin there seems to have had a bit of an off, it would seem, in the run on through the Regia chicane. Now, we can't quite get a replay of that at the moment, but I think a mistake there has cost Tillin quite dear as he drops down to P10 in the elite class. He's got John Eddowes behind him, and John Eddowes P3 in the pro class there, so it won't be too much of a concern as they make their way down Seraglio, but in the roll they go, and I think Eddowes here may just tuck in behind and do a little bit of a lift and coast into Ascari. But as they head towards the next braking zone, we look to Edith Frazina here, who lifts off there in the run into Lesbo 1. I think there might be a slowdown penalty for Edith Frazina. He's currently P3 in the AMP-Class. Of course, you'll remember that Frazina was the driver who was, of course, to win at Daytona in the AMP-Class by quite a staggering margin until it all went horribly wrong with regards to a technical issue with the Porsche, which saw him have to take a retirement. And as he makes his way down towards turn number 8, it was quite an instant that also went with that. But right now, the number 369 driver showing no signs of issue today, as meanwhile it's pit stop season in the pit lane, and everybody in, and there is Hackle Gristad, your race leader, coming on in. Joe Newman as well, they're all making the way in, but look at the gap that Gristad has made for himself over the rest. Meanwhile, one driver who refuses to pit, he goes one more lap compared to everyone else, and he wants the pleasure of leading at least one lap of this race. Matthew Cripps takes the overall and the elite lead here, as it is right now. We've got over 30 cars in the pit lane almost, as well you can see on the timing tower, the majority of the elite class top 10, and also the top half of what's the pro class top 10 in, and we've also got the Amsdale piloting. It is pit stop season, and well, as Gristad makes his way out the pit lane, he's already gone. Anthony here reappears ahead of Joe Newman, but look how much Joe Newman has called back up, and that goes to show you just how hard Anthony has had to push and how much fuel it's cost him in the process of trying to break away, and Newman in return has done a lot of fuel saving. Joshua Pratt meanwhile has fallen quite a bit back by comparison, 1.5 seconds back in fact. He's fallen off the back of the pair, and can Anthony and Newman break away and leave Joshua Pratt for the dust as they make their way for Curva Grande? That would be the game plan. Meanwhile, Peter Cox has stayed out in the pro class, and Dan Blackwell is still ahead of where's Alex Gaines. They make the way underneath our stationary camera there on what is the billboard over the top in the run to Regia, but you can see Blackwell right now, he's got a 4-second gap over Alex Gaines, and Gaines has really been pushing hard, and I wonder if he's overfueled the car potentially just to give himself a little bit more of an edge should he need to get a bit closer in the closing stages. Well, we'll see as he makes his way through the right hander of Lesbo 1, but in terms of his pit time there, it was a 20.5 second stationary time versus Blackwell's 18.72 stationary time. So Blackwell definitely having a much quicker start, and I wonder where he feels like he can do the rest of the race by just simply running in the toe of another driver. Well, time will tell, as we do have Matthew Crisp into the pit lane as I look at my commentary box window. Meanwhile, one driver here who continues to find himself right in the thick of it all. Well, there's David Lawson, who has made a pit stop and makes his way past Michael Warrington. Well, Warrington had quite a gradual stop compared to some of his peers. It came in at 19.48 seconds. But the difference is here, the AM leader, P18 overall. Next AM driver is Aaron McGregor, P26 for Warrington. He does not have to worry here about position, for the simple reason everybody around him is in a different class. And that's not to besmirch him here, it's just that he can afford not to worry about battling for finishing for that win currently, unless of course there is a major incident which may force him a bit further back. Alternatively, Aaron McGregor could come through the field like a knife through hot butter. But as they make their way up towards turn 11 right now, well, McGregor there at the very rear of this picture, you can see running on through in the privateer Audi, and of course it's very distinguishable given the fact it's in bright pink. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 11, the sponsors will be happy because they'll get a bit of camera time here, and that car stands out as he makes his way through the right hander of turn number 11. The AMR car really flying on through for Aaron McGregor Racing, I believe that stands for. And as he makes his way out of turn number 11, now down towards turn number 1 he goes once again. But meanwhile, in the battle between Protech Motorsport's Ryan Moles and what is Dean Powell there, out on the inside, and Moles is going to be forced a little bit deep, and there's contact between the two of them, a slight touch, but it's not much. And as they make their way on out, you can see that Daniel Lee has dropped in behind them in P15 in the elite class here, and Lee, after making his way up inside the top 10 for a moment, it all seems to have unfolded the opposite way in the pit window as they make their way on around. We've still got time to go, but everybody pushing on here as they make the way on around, and as they come in towards turns 4 and 5, we see the question there from Closet Sim Racer, any live timing. We do have the overlay up there with all the live timing gaps between drivers, and hopefully that is appearing on the stream, but if not, for whatever reason, do let us know. As Ryan Moles makes his way on through, they're being passed by Danny Lee as they come on through in towards turn number 7, and right now Lee once again going on the charge as they make the way up towards turn number 8, heading up towards Ascari, and the drivers nose to tail at the moment, but who will bring it on through later on? That will be the change, of course, because Lee right now will not become uninspired by the fact he's made one move versus an Audi. The next target will be the thrower Dean Powell, and can he get himself back inside the class top 10 come the very end? That'll be the change for him. Meanwhile, looking from battling to be inside the top 10 in the elite class to one driver who finds himself comfortably inside the top 10 of said class. Austin William Campbell here, who right now trying to run away from Alex Gaines behind, and Gaines, the second place pro driver here, just tucked into the toe as they make the way on down. 17 minutes still to go, plenty of time on the score for our drivers here, but right now the one driver who is fundamentally in a world of his own is this man, Hakkil Gestad, who lead in this race by a margin of 8.5 seconds. And what does that look like, I hear you ask? 8.5 seconds? Well, that is a gap. We haven't even seen second place right now. In fact, second place just coming on through the run, coming up towards what is turn number 2, coming in towards the chicane right there, as you see St. Anthony onto the brakes, but that is the gap. It is absolutely staggering that Gestad has eked out versus his rivals. They make the way into the first Lesmo, and right now it does look as though for St. Anthony it's all around just focusing on finishing that P2 position. But look at the driver who gained by overcutting Matthew Crisp here with a very quick pit time, and I wonder whether Crisp was doing a lot of fuel saving and whether he's decided to short stop the car in order to get up in position. Now he'll do fuel saving behind Cyber Anthony for as long as possible, but Crisp has gained 2 places in the pit stops. He's gone from P5 to P3 in class, and right now is battling for P2, and Matthew Crisp really coming on through today at Monza with regards to his strategic nuance as he makes his way out of Ascari and down towards Parabolica. But as he heads on through, and indeed I agree with you there, Medwo, he has done incredibly well on the pit stops here. Matthew Crisp has. Well, we then look to a little bit further down the order, and some other big gainers. Well, James Conley, who we see here in a bit of a lonely P8 at the moment in the AM class, the privateer, he has gained 12 places overall, 10 in class today, having started from what was effectively near the very back of the AM class grid, but he's made his way up bit by bit, and right now with a bit of damage to the front of that Ferrari, that's not going to help him on the straight. Meanwhile, one driver who's just had a lot of bad luck with him today, he's not been able to repair the car because they've done some light repair, but Matt Maddox and BDM Racing trying to put the pressure on Klein here as they make the way into Rogia. Onto the brakes they go, Maddox looks at it, but Klein just simply gets the door shut there, outbraking his rival, and I think Maddox has got to really try to assert himself to get the move done, but given the amount of time remaining, I think right now he would be best set just staying behind and making sure to pressure Klein into a potential mistake and then go for the move in the final 5 minutes, because otherwise he makes the move now, the next lap he could be counter-attacked by Klein as they make the way out of the second Lesbo. But as they make the way on up towards Ascari, we look back to Joshua Pratt, and meanwhile you can see Gallup is inside. That is Blackwell who goes to the move, and Blackwell, your pro leader, gets clear. The T6 Watara driver who we ride on board with here as he makes his way into the first of 2 Lesbos. Now this is looking as though Blackwell in his debut definitely making a statement here, which is he's fast enough to change the elites. I wonder as he comes out of Lesbo 1 into Lesbo 2 whether there may be a response from Alex Gaines, but Gaines is quite a way back. He's 7 seconds back at the moment, but he is in a long train of cars, which includes the elites of Nathan Foster, Joshua Fletcher, Austin William Campbell and Jacko Taylor. So I think for Gaines, he may now find himself a little bit stumped with regards to making progress, but that's the way it does go, of course, when you are trailing in packs here in the tow. Sometimes you come out in a group and you just can't find your way clear, and here is the aforementioned Alex Gaines. He makes his way into Ascari right now, finds himself behind the trio of elites as the pro driver here in P2 in class just watches on, but making that BMW fly true. And of course the BMW, as we heard about at the start of the season, not one of the strongest on the straights, not one of the fastest cars under 1 lap pace, but right now Gaines showing that it's got the consistency to count, and as he makes his way into Parabolica, well, definitely he is continuing to show that consistency in terms of those podium finishes, and this result will go a long way in terms of incrementing and giving him a greater advantage in his championship lead. But as he makes his way out to Parabolica and on to another lap, he goes on to his 18th lap under race conditions here in the sprint. Well, we do look to Nathan Scott. Meanwhile, he's chasing after Chris Edisford, and will Scott him make his way under braking for iRacing Blue. He's got there Stephen Masters behind, and also a little bit further back Sean Volandia, who's trying to close up, but Chris Edisford is his target in front. And as we ride on board the gearbox here, Chris Edisford, the 888 car from UKSimRacing. This is the battle for P6. Audi on Audi here, of course, both cars powered by the same engine. As they make the way down, it's the battle of the V10s, and Scott's getting closer and closer. He thinks about it under brake, and he goes all in. On the inside he goes. Does he get it stopped in time? He does indeed. Edison tries to hang around the outside, but there I think Nathan Scott gets the elbow and says no, there's no place for you there on the inside. I think Chris Edison might have a different opinion on that, and as they make the way out of turn number 2, he's not giving up here. You can see that Stephen Masters tucks in behind the pair of pros as the elite driver just watches on and tries to wager who's going to be the one to back as they make the way in towards Regina, because Masters would love to come on through and clear them. And as they make the way onto the brakes here, Edison up the inside. And I think there, where you can see Scott letting it go a little bit, but it's a battle through the remainder of the corner. Edison overcooks it under braking, and with that, Nathan Scott gets it done. Meanwhile, Stephen Masters goes wide as a result, and Sean Valendia now makes his way out through turn number 6, and coming up towards 7 he goes. And right now, the TC Sport Kimi driver capitalising on the loss of Stephen Masters, and these two right now will battle him for P16 in the elite class. He's going to P16 as Valendia as he makes his way up towards turn number 8, but right now it's probably not the way he expected to get it done, but he's got it done as he makes his way up towards the next corner. Further back, meanwhile, Casper Brotner here trying to go on the offensive versus what is Stuart Brown, and in return he wants to get clear of Daniel Page behind, because right now you can see here Page in the old Duty Cars car right now doing everything in his power to hunt down Brotner. I think these two for the same team, to be fair, just raging on in the battle as they head into the braking zone. Both racing for ODC or Old Duty Cars, as it abbreviates to, and as they make the way through Ascari, we're working together as well, but they'll both want to be the number 1 driver in the team come the end of it for their respective Drivers' Championship aspirations, but they've still got a bit of time on the clock, and as they head down towards Parabolica, no change at the moment. Their next target will be this man at the front of our camera, and that's Eden Frazina here as he makes his way on around and is focused on rolling on through turn number 11. The 369 driver here currently one of the highest placed Porsches on this grid. The only other Porsche further ahead of him is Jacko Taylor in P7 overall. Frazina right now P27 overall, and we did expect the Porsche here not to be on the form today, but right now P3 in class would say otherwise as he continues to press on, but it is a 7.1 second gap to McGregor ahead of him, and then a further 9 seconds to AM class leader of Michael Warrington as Daniel Page into the pit lane, and as he comes on through, it's a second stop for Page, and well, I'm not exactly sure why. Perhaps he's underfueled the car by accident, but it's a very quick stop, 4.3 seconds, so if he did underfuel, then he must have noticed it soon, because there he goes once again, but that is very costly, and it drops him all the way down to P8 in class. And well, would he have anybody else coming up close behind him? Well, his next driver will be Thomas Barja, but right now you can see here the number 40 Ferrari not close enough at all as they make their way in towards turn number 1, but it'll take inspiration here because Page Knight now will need to get himself back up to speed and temperature. Further back, meanwhile, Matt Maddox here, the one driver who right now has had all the misfortune come his way in the AM class today. He chases after Frank Klein and Simon Hartley, and Simon Hartley's dropped down to P12 in recent laps with a couple of errors. Well, right now the TC Sport Culper driver trying to hold off Klein and Maddox in the run to the end of this race. 10 minutes still to go, and then even further back, last driver right now running on the lead lap is Jack Bullen, running 43rd overall, and what is P15 in the AM class, but behind him there is your race leader of Hackungestad, who right now is inching ever closer, and those blue flags will start to wave for his driver in front as Bullen will be wary of that. But meanwhile, there's a car spun and the run into Regina, and that's Matt Maddox, who has had a turn around, and he brings the car back round. He goes to the full 360, and the BDM Racing driver not having too much favour at the chicanes of what exactly happened. Well, this was in the run. That's Frank Klein there under brake. Now Maddox just a bit too close under brake and has to divert to the grass. And the BDM Racing driver there, well, he went for safety, and to give him credit, I think if he had not done that, he might have come charging through the back of his two peers in front, just a bit late on the brakes, and then deciding, you know what, I'm going to have to sacrifice myself to make sure other drivers are not involved in the incident. And Maddox there will give away his race, but at the same time, definitely put his hand up to what seemed to go wrong, and now bring it back up to speed. The tyres won't be too pleased about that, but I think his rivals in front of him will be pleased there that he managed to steer clear, as it seemed to go all wrong for the number 20 car. But as he gets back up to speed now, he'll lose out in this battle between Klein and Hartley. Klein has got ahead of Hartley as they make their way into turn number 11, but coming on down through the right hander they go here, and we look from the back of the field towards the front of the field, particularly P11 right now, overall P9 in the elite class, and that is Nathan Foster as he makes his way through turn number 8, through Ascari, he charges, and you can see there right now Martin Tilling just behind him, then Alex Gaines in front of the pro driver, but Tilling, the elite driver, still trying to stay close and keep Foster on it, but they all are running on a similar pace here, and at the very front of this group is the Ford GT of Austin William Campbell, the Symphony Esports black driver here, really confounding everyone behind. Because for all the pace they gain through the corners, this Ford GT, as we see it making its way out of Parabolica Curve, we ride on board the gearbox, and just look at the gap it pulls on this straight. Now Fletcher, of course, will be in the tow, but that's 4 tenths and 600ths, and that gap is only coming down little by little in the run into Retteville chicane. Onto the brakes they go, and how much did the gap come down to? It dropped by a tenth in the run of the entirety of the start of finish straight. That is how much speed Austin William Campbell is carrying on that Ford GT, and it's all in the corners where Fletcher will really have to try and bulldoze his way on through. Albeit he won't want to take Campbell off the circuit, of course, but he'll have to really send it and try and pressure William Campbell into a stake if he wants to get that move done. Otherwise, it just will never come. For the simple reason, this Ford GT just opens up acres in relative space on the straights as they make the way through Regia here. These are the corners where the Ford GT will really feel the pinch, because it's such a heavy chassis compared to the rest of its GT3 peers, and therefore it really takes a toll on the tyres and also the average apex speed. Meanwhile, further back, David Larson there in the Symphony Esports white cut up the inside in the Ghostbusters livery, making his way on through. Turns 4 and 5 through Regia goes, and he busts his way up into P4, taking the position in the Pro Class of the Peter Cox in the move on the inside into Regia. Nice classic move there, and the UKSimRacing driver tucks back in. He's got the elites of Dean Powell and Ryan Moles behind him, and also we do believe Brian Davies and Michael Warrington, your AM leader, on the back of this group as well. Warrington's just going to rub his hands together, and I think, and watch this, with a bucket of proverbial popcorn in the cockpit in terms of just seeing how it unfolds and getting ready to react should places become opportune to him. But meanwhile, Peter Cox on the inside, and we'll lose it out there versus Dean Pound, deciding to let it go. And I think Cox here deciding to let the elites come on through and put the pressure on David Larson for the end of the lap as they make the way out of turns 9, 10, down towards 11. They charge. We're in that long run at the moment. You can see Cox there staying in behind, and Moles takes a little bit of a peek. But Cox returns to the racing line. Powell there on the inside. He's going to battle it, is Powell, as Cox tries to go round the outside. But as they make the way through Parabolica, that's going to open the door to Ryan Moles, who continues to throttle on through here. We ride on board with Moles. It's too wide at the moment. It's a drag race all the way on down. But as they come across, that time barrier is very close. Oh my good lord! And the two of them come together. It's a disaster as the two drivers get squeezed together, albeit though I think Peter Cox coming across perhaps did not realise how close Moles was in terms of the overlap. But in return, Moles there, we thought he was going to go into the tyre barrier, but in the end it has not worked out for either of them, and both Cox and Moles will be towed to the pit lane. It's a disaster, and not the way either of them wanted it to go, and that's both of their races in tatters, and it will open up opportunities for other drivers, of course, who will be promoted further down the field. But as they continue on around right now, we've still got 5 minutes to go, and anything can happen here in the GT3 League, of course. And as they make their way around Monza for the last couple of times today, you can imagine that everybody will be hoping they can have a positive conclusion to the race, and if any moves are to be made, they can make them succinctly and successfully as they head on down towards the final 5 minutes. Well, Jacko Taylor here, for example, at his debut, battling for P5 at the moment in the elite class, P6 overall, holding off the charger Joshua Pratt behind. He's lost the toe of Blackwell, however, Blackwell now 1.3 seconds clear, and that Ferrari looking very confident on the straights as Taylor does have that pressure of Pratt, and Pratt looks up the inside here, tries to get the nose in on the Audi on that inside line into Parabolica. It's going to be too wide in the TT Sport car. Marte driver Taylor gives it the space as they power the way on out. We see the teeth on the sides of the car showing the aggression, but is he able to find the aggression in the run to turn number 1? Well, it's going to be a drag race here. If we know one thing the Porsche just does not do well, it is that top end speed, but he's had a good run out the corner, of course, with Pratt being compromised to the inside, and Pratt then backs out. He tucks back in for now. He picks up a little bit more overspeed, then goes for it again. We briefly lose Taylor there in the run into the braking zone. Now, where's Taylor going to reappear? If he is going to reappear, surely not. We have not lost Jacko Taylor. Hopefully he does reappear any moment now, but if so, and indeed he does there, but we lose him again briefly, but he has been passed there by Joshua Pratt in a bit of a ghost overtake. But right now, as they press on, well, we can see Austin William Campbell has been passed by Fletcher, and how has that happened is the question. We will find out very shortly, but it has not worked out. Austin William Campbell this time going through the Retteville chicane, and as he makes way to the braking zone now, he's under pressure there from Nathan Foster and Alex Gaines. He's trying to stem the tide, but it looks like the cork is halfway out the bottle, and it's started to leak positions, and he makes his way up towards Lesbo 1 once again, and this is how the move was made by Joshua Fletcher. win the run down towards turn number 1. Onto the brakes they went, and coming on down, you see that Fletcher have to really get close. Onto the brakes he went, and Austin William Campbell in the end. Well, they're on the brakes and missed it entirely. Meanwhile, Alex Gaines being passed there by Nathan Foster, and that's how the exchange was made. And with Nathan Foster letting Gaines go, not letting Gaines go, my apologies there, tucking into the top of Austin William Campbell to try and give himself a bit of an extra draft, and that's how it unfolded. So it was a mistake from William Campbell in the end, and that's the only way Fletcher could really find a way of beating the beast in the United States, as right now the Ford continues to charge on. But as they make the way down towards turn at number 11, well, a little bit further behind all this, Michael Warrington right now continuing to enjoy a peaceful run in the lead of the AM class here, P19 overall, albeit sandwiched by a number of pros and elites, and elite drivers in particular this instance, with Ryan Davies in front of him and Sean Valandia behind him. But I don't think the TE6 Sport Car Marte driver is going to be complaining too much about that, given right now he has got plenty of time in the world, and the second place driver in class is this man, Aaron McGregor. You can't miss him as the privateer makes his way down towards turn number 11, and right now the Audi driver here definitely showed a great run of form, returning to that form we saw at Silverstone, of course, where he picked up the season opener, and as he makes his way down into turn number 11 right now, this will be a huge result for him. But meanwhile, speaking of huge results, you see here Austin William Campbell have a huge result if he can keep Foster and Fletcher at bay. But of course with Fletcher getting on through, now he's got to keep Foster at bay as they make the way through Curva Grande behind. That is going to be what is Martin Tilley battling side by side with Gaines, and Gaines only moments ago going 3 wide with Campbell, and what was Foster in the run out of Rettifidio, and in towards Regia they go. Campbell defends on the inside, and they will have one more lap after this based on the current count, as they make the way out of Regia once more. Austin William Campbell making that forward as wide as humanly possible if it needed to be wider, and as he makes his way through Lesbo 1 here, what else can his rival throw, as Martin Tillin there has a small tank slapper coming out of Lesbo 1, a bit of oversteer moment there, and he goes wide through Lesbo 2, and as the tyre's gone on Tillin's car, he rejoins, but he loses the run there and drops by Alex Gaines, and that may be all they wrote for the McLaren driver today, as the number 3 car now gets himself back up to speed. But I think he managed to settle for P10 in class, P12 overall, as he heads on towards Ascari. But meanwhile, there's more drama as James Corley's had it all go so very wrong in the run into Rettifidio, and what exactly happened? Wonder braking here, of course, with that damage on the front of the car. P7 in class at the time, having recovered, working so hard to gain places. Onto the brakes he went, and the car just went straight on, and he's had to let the car go on through. But meanwhile, return to the live pictures here, and well, with the live pictures now return to Matthew Crisp continue to battle with Joe Newman, as Newman on the inside there versus Crisp, under braking into turn number 1, and this is the battle for P3 on the final lap here as the race leader's got him through, and Crisp there being given the elbow out onto the dirt and dust, and as he makes his way up to speed once again, he will not be too pleased with that. I think he felt as though he had the entitled line, but meanwhile behind Jacko Taylor battling with Joshua Pratt, and Pratt coming on through very rapidly right at the end of this race as he makes his way for the right-hander at turn number 3. They head up towards Regia onto the brakes, Taylor on the inside in his battle for P5, Pratt on the outside, and he just gets the door shut once again as they roll the way on through Regia for the final time of asking here today. They'll have 25 laps under race conditions, and we've still got half a lap to go, and we've still got some battles unresolved as they rage on here, but we're not long to go right now. It is really coming down to crunch time. Can Pratt find a way past Taylor, as Taylor here stays strong in the tow as they make the way out of Lesbo 2. Well, coming up towards Ascari, he's running out of overtaking opportunities, and of course he'll only really have here and also the run down towards Parabolica Curve to get it done, unless he wants it to be a drag race to the line. But meanwhile, speaking of a race to the line, well, right now I think he can take it nice and easy because he's been unstoppable all day, and as he comes through the final corner after putting it on pole by 4/10 of a second, he's never looked back. He heads to the line, he will be a winner, and Hackle Gestad for England Motorsport is your winner at Monza in both the elite class and overall by 10.7 seconds over Cy Anstey, who comes on home P2 there, the privateer, and he will finish ahead of Joe Newman at the line, who completes the overall and elite podium. The iRacing red drive will be followed up by Dan Blackwell here, your pro winner on his debut, the privateer, ahead of Jacko Taylor and Joshua Pratt. We will then have Matthew Crisp coming to line P7 ahead of Josh Fletcher P8, Nathan Foster P9, and it'll be Alex Gaines P10, and second place in the Pro class ahead of Martin Tillin, followed up by John Eddowes, who completes the Pro podium. He comes on through, and then we do have Austin William Cabell just ahead of Daniel Lee, but meanwhile it's not long until we see our P19 driver overall and your AM winner. It is Michael Warrington from TG Sport Car Marte who wins in the end by a staggering 18.5 seconds, but there's more drama. Further back as Aaron McGregor's had a spin on the final lap, and Eden Frazina comes on through. He's going to come on P2 in the AM class. He makes his way on around. Jaco Boshoff behind him, and then I believe that's Casper Brotner, but Frazina crosses the line, second place in the AM class. Meanwhile, Aaron McGregor, he's run out of fuel. He's run out of fuel at the very end of the final lap, and he's just creeping to the line where it's got to be fuel. And Aaron McGregor's second place lies in tears. It wasn't a spin, it was fuel bollocks 6, and Casper Brotner completes the AM podium as he crosses the line. And well, goodness me, some drivers I think literally under fueling the car all the way to the finish as James Colley crosses the line there, P32, overall P6 in the AM class, and as he comes on across the line there, well, what a dramatic day as we've got Frank Klein battling with Richard Curie to the line. This is in the battle for P10, and Klein's got the run as I think Curie's run out of fuel. He comes from a slowdown right at the end, and Frank Klein completes the AM top 10, P36 overall, and I think Curie there's just got no fuel left as he just simply comes to a halt. So many drivers at the end of this race literally on empty fuel tanks. Simon Hartley comes to line, and oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, well, they could not have cut it closer for a good number of drivers as Hakon Gustad comes into the pit lane, and we can see him there very gradually coming on through. I think that car's almost out of fuel, that McLaren, but at the same time I think he'll be smiling from ear to ear because it has been a dominant day for the Ignium Motorsport driver from Norway. But with that, it is now time for us to take a look at the race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries, and well, here they are. We start off with our overall results, and we'll cover the top 10 plus special mentions across the classes. But Hakon Gustad there, your overall winner of round number 3 in the GT3 League Season 9, as hosted by UKSimRacing on iRacing, winning by 11 seconds in the end over Cy Anthony, the Ignium Motorsport driver, absolutely unstoppable today. Cy Anthony P2 ahead of Joe Newman there, the Simam Racing Red driver, completing the run onto the final step of the overall elite podium, ahead of Dan Blackwell, your pro winner on his debut, the privateer, taking the win at 20 seconds off the leader, but in return we're an advantage of 12 seconds over his next closest peer in class. Jaco Taylor there, the elite driver, P5 ahead of Joshua Pratt, P6, and Pratt and Chris battling all the way through that final lap. Of course, it came to elbows out going through what was the Retifilio chicane, and I think Matthew Crisp in P7 there will feel as though he was denied the right to battle right at the end. Josh Fletcher P8 ahead of Nathan Foster P9, and then Alex Gaines completes your overall top 10, second place of the pro class, with best the rest in P11 at Martin Tillin. Special mention to P12 overall there of John Eddowes, the TG Sport Kimi driver, who rounds off the pro podium, third on the pro podium. And as we continue to look our way down the order, a special mention to P19 overall driver there of Michael Warrington, the TG Sport Car Marte driver there, taking the win in the AM class by an absolutely staggering margin come the finish in excess of 20 seconds, with Eden Frazina taking second place on the final lap, the privateer, P25 overall, second place in the AM class, and just pipping Casper Brotner to the post, with Brotner finishing P27 overall at third on the AM podium. As we continue down, of course, a special mention going there to Aaron McGregor, P38, because it was a run out of fuel right at the end that cost him so dear. It didn't work out for Aaron McGregor, but still plenty more opportunities. And as we continue to make our way down the result standings there, we did of course have a number of retirements in this race, including what was there, Peter Cox, AG Garcia. Well, in fact, was it Peter Cox? If we just double check the numbers there, in fact we had more than Peter Cox just retiring. We also did have the retirements, as I understand it, of Ryan Moles, Peter Cox, AG Garcia, Colin Patterson, Dion Wren, Jeff Griffiths, Edward Knight, Adrian Kukulis, and also Damien Lobbit. That completes our 51 car standing finishing positions, but great racing all the way through overall. And now as we come onto the individual classes, starting with the elites, we can see here your race winner in the elite class by 11 seconds, as mentioned previously, Hakon Gustad, ahead of Cy Anthony and Joe Newman. Jacko Taylor in the end, P4 for the TE Sport Car Marte driver on his debut in this season. And a solid drive from him, just missing out on the podium and then not quite the pace to hold on and having to really battle to hold on to P4 come the finish versus Joshua Pratt, but doing so successfully. And then Matthew Chris P6 had a Josh Fletcher P7, Nathan Foster P8, Martin Tillin P9, and then Austin William Campbell P10. Just did not quite have enough in the tank with that Ford GT to be able to hold on to P7, and it all started to slip away on the final couple of laps. Daniel Lee, best of the rest there, P11, the privateer, not working out for the Ferrari driver today, but I think caught up in a number of battles and that stemmed his progress. And then Sam Congreve, P12, head of Dean Powell, Ryan Davis and Sean at Valandia. That's the run of the top 15. And then Stephen Masters, Ryan Moles, and what was Damien Lobbit there, completing your 18 drivers in the elite class. Coming on to the pro class. And we can see here that Dan Blackwell taking the win in the pro class by almost 12 seconds, the privateer over fellow privateer of Alex Gaines, with John Eddowes there completing the pro podium. And a great effort from all three. Congratulations to them. With David Larson P4, that's in for the eSports White driver, really having the difficult run in the pro class, having to pick his way through the order, gaining 7 places from the overall starting position. And then Nathan Scott P5 ahead of Chris Eddersford, who held off Mark Collicott, Jakob Boschov, Tom Farr and Stuart Brown in the second half of the top 10. Stuart Brown P10 ahead of Best of the Rest, Peter Cox P11 for UKSimRacing, and then Colin Patterson, Dean Wren, Edward Knight and Jeff Griffiths completing the pro standings. And then we come on to the AM classification, last but not least of course, and we can see Michael Warrington there for Tiki Sport Car Marte taking the win in the end by 19 seconds over Eden Frazina, the privateer, battling on and making that Porsche work at a circuit where it wasn't expected to perhaps work as much as it did, and also at the same time redemption for what happened at Daytona. Casper Brotner P3 there, and old dudes in cars unexpected podium, but he'll take it, he'll be pleased with that. Head of Brock Freight, Ryan Gonzalez, who completed the top 5, and then James Connolly P6. Soldiering on to P6 in the damaged Ferrari, the privateer ahead of fellow privateers of Thomas Barjak and Darren Sharples. Frank Klein P9, Richard Curie P10 for Team Azor in a battling result to the finish, being pipped to the post by Frank Klein at the very end, running out of fuel. And then Aaron McGregor, what was P12, but not before Daniel Pays there in P11. Pays being the best of the rest there for old dudes in cars, with that second pit stop costing him very dear at the midpoint of the race. And then Aaron McGregor P12, the privateer, running out of fuel when he was on course for P2. And what a sad way to wrap up his day at Monza, but still he'll learn from him and he'll look to bounce back next week, I'm certain of that. Then Simon Hartley P13 ahead of Matt Maddox, Jack Bullen, Mark Johnson, Adrian Garcia and Adrian Kukulis, and I believe that is all 18 of our AMs accounted for, and congratulations to all of them as well. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are our race results, and now we get ready for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. We'll be back in approximately 10 minutes of those, but don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are back and ready to go with our post-round interviews. Now, we currently have 3 volunteers available, and we're going to be hearing 3 very different perspectives on the day. First, we're going to be hearing from Håkon Gristad, our Autodromo Motorsport winner overall and in the elite class, never putting a foot wrong and just running away from the field in the McLaren MP4 12C. It'll be interesting to hear his perspective on what was definitely a day where he seemed unstoppable. And then we'll be going to fellow elite driver Martin Tillin, the number 3 driver from UKSimRacing Copa, whereby starting on what was 5th on the grid, ended up finishing 11th overall and 9th in class in what was a difficult day for the McLaren driver and seemed to really be where the fortunes were going slightly downhill as the race got to its ultimate climax. We'll then be hearing from AM winner Michael Warrington, the UKSimRacing Car Marte driver in the number 31 Ferrari, who having started 17th overall and the leader of the class, never looked back despite dropping 2 overall positions and ran away with proceedings. But without further ado, we're going to have Håkon Gristad join us now. And well, as he gets ready to join me in the interview room, we'll be getting to hear from exactly how it played out on his perspective over the course of the entire evening. In fact, we can't quite pull him in, so he will have to come to us, and he does join us now. And Håkon, let me just say, firstly, what an absolutely monstrous race from yourself. We have not seen a win by that margin at Monza in some time. And, well, you must be absolutely pleased, taking the win in the end by over 10 seconds.
Yeah, very satisfying. I was really not expecting to be this dominant tonight. I wasn't expecting to win at all. Like, I was thinking people were going to sniff on the 46 times, but yeah, didn't happen.
Now, we do have to ask with regards to, just before we go a little bit deeper into the interview, is there any way you can get your microphone just a little bit closer, as it sounds a bit distant at the moment?
Sure thing. Give me a sec. Maybe that's better.
That is perfect, good sir. So you were saying there with regards to expecting the field to be a bit closer, but in the end, just the delta between yourself and the field was quite noticeable from start to finish. And from the start, take us through qualifying, because you looked to be on absolutely fine form. And initially, it was almost half a second you're on pole by, and it never came below 4 tenths.
Yeah, no, I think the qualifying lap was as good as it was going to get. I think I left maybe a tenth out there, and other than that, I don't think I could have improved much. Yeah, really good lap. I figured something out in turn 1, like I really found the line through there, and that gained me a lot of time.
Now, with regards to the lines and of course Monza, we talked about in the show that the key to success at Monza is really having that confidence, whether it be on the brakes or getting back on the power as soon as possible. But the McLaren, a car which is seen as a very fast car based on the current balance of performance, but perhaps not the strongest on the straights, but very good in the corners. What do you think was the key to success in the McLaren, other than the driver behind the wheel, of course, because the driver makes up 90% of the aspect?
I think consistency and just being able to really flow with the track. I think the McLaren really flows well when you get your lines right. It sits on the track. It doesn't really it just goes.
Indeed, absolutely flying, and like you say, it just goes. And look at how you just went at the very start of the race. And just with regards to your approach to the race start, we saw you go relatively in the midpoint in terms of when you could have go versus how long you could have held the field for. Was that your intention, to sort of jump everyone at the midpoint of the race start procedure?
I didn't really have a plan. I just wanted to catch them a little bit off guard, so I'd be clear into turn 1, and I achieved that. So yeah.
And then, of course, having got the launch and everybody in sight, Anthony alongside you in a Ferrari, which has been no slouch on the straights here at Monza today, it looked as though every lap had to be absolutely perfect for you to maintain that gap and open up. Just take us through what it's like when you have to drive at 100% effectively in that McLaren for so long. Of course, it's taxing, but you never made a single mistake. We didn't even see a minor off track.
Oh, well, I had plenty of off tracks, mate. You might not have seen them, but I had I think I had 8 off tracks or so.
Goodness me, pushing it all the way to limit and then a little bit beyond, but of course not stepping a foot wide. And as a result of that lead that you started building, was there a certain amount of time you were looking to build to think that you were safe from the field, given the prospect of the undercut or fuel saving strategies?
I mean, once I got it up to like 7-8 seconds, I kind of backed off a little bit, just kept it there and tried to keep it safe, not throw away, fairly fairly secured win for, you know, a 10th on one lap.
Oh, indeed, a very secure win. And with regards to your strategy, had you had it planned from the start when you were going to pits? We did see the mass exodus of pretty much the entire field, bar about 2 or 3 cars in each of the classes into the pits on the same lap.
Yeah. I wasn't completely sure how many laps there were going to be. I was thinking there might be 26 laps. So I was fueling for 13 and doing 13 laps on both stints, which ended up being a little bit too much. Also, changed the left side tires, which I think helped out.
So changing the left side tyres, you say, was that because the tyre degradation was so high given the recently updated tyre wear model for GT3s?
That too, and Monza is a very right-hand turn track, right? Like a lot of the load is on the left-hand side tires. So yeah, like my left side tires were down to like 70% or so when I pitted, while my rights were like 90-ish. So yeah.
Understandable, and definitely that tyre change really working out for you nicely in terms of, you say, a very right corner orientated circuit. And then coming back out the pits, it looked as though it was business as usual. Was there any point though where you must have thought to yourself, you know, I can afford to back off 5%, or are you one of those drivers where if you back off even a percentage, like the late Ayrton Senna, you end up potentially starting to make mistakes?
Yeah, that's the scary part of it, backing off, right? Like you find that groove, and if you try and go a little bit slower to be safe, usually, you know, just changing up your pace can introduce mistakes. I did back off a little bit just to make sure, like, that, you know, braking a little bit earlier, not, you know, going 100%, but like 95. That seemed to work fine.
Indeed, with the idea of not backing off too much, that way you can keep your foot in it and make sure not to lose that concentration. Taking the win at the line by the margins we described of almost 11 seconds. It must have made you smile to think you've not just won at Monza, which is difficult enough in itself, but you've powered away from the field by a staggering margin.
Yeah, very surprised that I was able to drive away the way I did. Monza is usually a track where you have a lot of close racing, and it's really hard to get away from the guys behind, but I was gone by like lap 4 or so yeah.
Definitely say that your performance is not just admired in the commentary booth, but we've got a number of people in the YouTube live chat, including what is there, Medmo, and also Ed Knight, one of your colleagues at what is Autodromo Motorsport, saying that driver of the day for them, one of the drivers of the day has to be yourself for the dominance in the masterclass up the front. Now, of course, we've seen you flying high over not just this round, but the first 2 rounds as well, albeit this is your first win in the season. How are you feeling for the next round as we make our way around the globe and head to the Magny-Cours circuit in France?
I've only done 1 race there, and yeah, I think the track's fun, but I'm not sure how well I'll do there, especially not in the Macca. It's a little bumpy, you know, having to take a lot of curbs here and there, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on at the Magny-Cours circuit in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
I just got to give a shout out to my teammates at Ignim, you know, cheering me on, being there in Discord and chatting. Yeah.
Well, they are very, very grateful for your kind words with regards to thanking them, and also with respect to your performance today, and also your humbleness with regards to the performance as well. But with that, Hakon, thank you for joining me in the interview room. Congratulations, what has been an absolute masterclass in the McLaren state at Monza, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time at Magny-Cours.
Thanks, bud.
All the best. And so here and there from our McLaren expert from Autodromo Motorsport of Hakon Gridstad, who we incorrectly had listed as a privateer there on the broadcast for a moment, but that's been changed around. But really, as you heard from himself there, staggered in a way by his own prowess at the start of the race session tonight, with that pole lap in excess of 4 tenths faster than what anybody else was able to achieve. And there, with regards to lap, it was practically a perfect lap, only missing perhaps a tenth or 2 off of the ultimate optimum lap. But to be fair, when it comes down to fine margins and when you're under so much pressure, to be able to get that close to your perfect lap is a huge achievement, and that achievement set him up for success all the way through the start of the race. and also making the break early, deciding to go at a relatively mixed point. I think a lot of drivers may have been expecting him to go right as late as possible, but he's decided to go at the midpoint between when he was permitted to go and when he had to go racing, and that through the field, and therefore Sight Anthony started to create a little bit of the bottled up run for P2 into turn 1, and Gustavo just given the room to break away. And as we can see in the pictures here, only a couple of laps into the race relative to the 45 minutes, and already that gap opening up, and really the McLaren today flying on through and really being the elite of the elite. Can he make it 2 out of 2 next time in our endurance round at Magny-Cours? We'll have to wait and see. But now, as we look to our next interviewee, we'll very shortly be hearing from Martin Tillin, the UKSimRacing Copa driver, who having a bit of mixed fortunes by comparison today, but still enjoying the racing all the way through, and having started quite well in terms of his qualifying session, went a bit backwards over the course of the racing duration, and it'll be interesting to hear his perspective in what seemed to be quite a difficult race. Well, as we do give him the call to join us, and he will be joining us very shortly, as we just invite him in. But also, it'll be interesting to hear his perspective on the tyre wear situation. Of course, we heard there from Gustad about the tyre wear and needing to change those left tyres. But as Martin Tillin joins us now from UKSimRacing Copa, Martin, a good qualifying session, albeit it didn't quite work out in the race. Mixed fortunes at Monza today, or was that P9 in class, P11 overall, the best you could get out of the car, in your opinion?
No, it was a mixed race. I put in a decent quali lap. Just I probably could have pinched P2. I lost a 10th in the last corner. Just had a tiny weeny bit of oversteer on the exit. Just lost me a 10th. So I think, or maybe even 2 10. I don't know how much I would have lost, but it cost me time in that last corner in the quali. So there's probably a bit more time in it. But it was the best I could have done, and it was actually not bad. I ended up P5, I think it was. I started, and it was a decent quali lap, but there was more time there. But during the race, the start wasn't great. Turn 1, it was too wide in there. We were all battling. I had to give room on the inside, so it pushed me wide on the second part, and I just tapped the gravel. Didn't spin, just had to lift off and lost a few places there. And then as we went through the race, I had to avoid collisions, so I had to take slow downs into turn 1 because I didn't want to get involved in collisions. So there was twice I had to dodge that, and that cost me a few places as well. So it was just a bad luck day, I guess. I probably could have done better if I didn't have these avoidance maneuvers, shall I say.
Oh, indeed. With regards to your luck, not having too much fortune here, and just dialing it back to qualifying, you mentioned about the fact that there's a bit more time on the board. It does look difficult in the Monza circuit, even though it's perhaps one of the more simple circuits when you look at it on a piece of paper compared to what we have, such as Magny-Cours coming on up. But just take us through from your perspective, what makes Monza a challenging circuit to get the lap right?
Extremely heavy braking zones. This McLaren is on the setup I run, usually rear brake bias, like more towards the rear. So if you go a little bit too hard on the brakes, the car can start wobbling around on the rear, and it gets unstable going into corners. And these heavy braking zones do take their toll, both on your tyres and yourself. And although it's quite a simple circuit, it is very tricky getting those braking zones right, and mistakes can happen everywhere on every corner.
And with that higher propensity of mistakes in qualifying alone, when you're out there by yourself in a qualifying session, you translate it into a 51 car pack making its way into turn number 1. And of course, like you're saying, too wide into the opening couple of corners, the concertina effect as well. But even as the race went on, things start to space out. But one thing that was quite fundamental early on, you found yourself running near a group of cars, indeed quite a few elite drivers, and there was one Ford GT in there that looked very menacing and trying to pick its way through everyone, piloted by Austin William Campbell.
Yeah, I think I was actually battling him there into turn 1 where I had to back out. Yeah, it was very luminous. I couldn't really see my side mirrors because with the McLaren, the field of view is a lot closer to the dashboard, so I can't technically see my mirrors. But in my rear view mirror that I had, I could see him looming there large. And I think we'd had a drag race or 2 down the straights before, so it's like, who's got the guts to brake late? And it was fun battling. It was huge fun. And that Ford is no slouch down the straights. It's definitely quick.
Oh, most definitely. And we can see Austin William Campbell has just said hello in the YouTube chat, so he's listening in here, and I think he would be very happy to agree with you that great battling. But it wasn't just about battling the unicorn car of the field, the 1.4 GT. We saw you in a pack that also consisted of Daniel Lee, also I believe it was Dean Powell, and a couple of other drivers, including one of your teammates at UKSimRacing. But it looked as though really for every 10th you perhaps gained in the corner on the straights, everything was neutralised with the draft.
Yeah, yeah, it's getting. I was struggling. Like this pack here, where we see us now, it was running pretty close together in the pack, and this is before my second maneuver I had to dodge into turn one. So I was in a good pack. I was just considering fuel saving, being in the larger pack. You wouldn't really be able to get past everybody unless you dive bomb every corner. But I decided just to stick behind them. Sean actually ended up letting me go, I think, out of this turn one because obviously he was running a little bit slower this week, so he let me go. But yeah, it was fun running in the pack, but it's a tricky one in the corners because everyone's got the draft and you start gaining into the braking zones and then you get them in the chicanes and everyone's bunched up. You can't pit past anyone, so you're stuck in the draft again for another lap. It's a tricky one when you're in a group.
Well, indeed, tricky because of the tone. Also then having to, like you say, look at that potential fuel saving and work your strategy out whilst also looking at track position. And with regards to your strategy, of course, with the instance that we saw on the opening stint of your race, did you decide to change up your strategy as a result? Because we did see the mass exodus of pretty much 90% of the field into the pit lane on the same lap.
Yeah, I didn't fuel save enough. I was two-minded. I was in two minds whether to do it. I didn't do enough of it to get an extra lap. Came in with 0.8, a little bit more, and I might have had an extra lap. But yeah, it was everyone sort of dived in at the same time, so the strategy went out the window. And after I come out, it was just push, 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 and I just had to try and get past. But I didn't think I made too many overtakes, so it was a tough race.
Indeed, and in that second stint we did see a mistake right towards the end that was very costly for yourself and moved yourself down going through the second Lesmo. Were the tyres starting to give way by that point?
Well, I actually braked a little too heavy into Lesmo 1 and I had a little wiggle in Lesmo 1 and then that obviously overheated the tyres a little bit going into the entrance of Lesmo 2 and I had even bigger slapper going out of Lesmo 2. And lucky I didn't go in the wall, or I just lifted off the throttle. Lucky I caught it. But yeah, it cost a lot. I mean, I wasn't really battling. I had the pro leader ahead of me, so my main thought was, oh god, I don't want to wipe anyone out. So I just went off the track and just come back on safely. It was the end of it then. The battle was over. So I sort of just sat back and just relaxed to the checkers and just chilled out a bit.
Indeed, able to relax a little bit, and of course having run in, correct me if I'm wrong here, having run in the Daytona 24 hours this weekend as well, or at least your teammates have, and you've been supporting them if you haven't been behind the car yourself. It must feel nice now to be able to put your feet up for a week before we head to Magny-Cours.
Yeah, I haven't actually done Daytona this week. I haven't done any endurance racing this season, but Magny-Cours, haven't done a single lap. A new track I don't know, so I got tomorrow and Tuesday before I'm back at work again, so I probably get a few laps in and see how it goes. But it's going to be interesting. There's another track I need to learn. Many of them last season that and then we move on to one of my favourite tracks. We move on to Nürburgring, where correct me if I'm wrong, I had a really good race last time I did it, so it's going to be interesting in the second half of the season to see, especially on the circuits with walls, to see how we get on.
Well, indeed, it will be fascinating. Like you say, we do recall you having a good run in Season 8 at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. But with that in mind, of course, Magny-Cours coming up, and you're giving us your perspective on the circuit. Just before we do let you go, Martin, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, it's my first interview of the season. I would just like to put a thank you out there to UKSimRacing for bringing me into their team this season. It's just a really strange feeling having all your enemies from last season or two in your team now. I think there was a mass exodus of the grid at the end of last season to try and get their numbers up a bit. And I'm super happy to be driving for them. They have some fantastic drivers, so I can learn a lot from them. And I'm hoping I hope team orders don't come into it, but they're a great team to be with, and I'm super happy, and I'd like to thank them dearly for inviting me into their team.
That's absolutely brilliant to hear, and glad to hear you're feeling at home with the UKSimRacing crew. Indeed, we've got 5 teams from UKSimRacing on the grid, and you're part of one of the leading teams at Corpa at the moment, and it's great to have you all here. But of course, it's been great to have you in the interview room with us, Martin, and congratulations on your result today, and may luck come your way at Magny-Cours. But until then, have a lovely evening.
Thank you for having me, Paul. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you next time. Hopefully with a win in my bag, I hope.
Fingers crossed for you, but all the best.
Thanks, Paul. Have a good evening.
You too. So hearing it there from Martin Tillin, and not his day today, but an interesting perspective, feeling as though despite the P5 in qualifying, there was a bit more out there in terms of the qualifying lap, and that goes to show you that even when you qualify inside the top 5, it's sometimes not enough, even as a driver's perspective, when you feel as though there is a lot more. And well, as he continues to push on, you can imagine now that with that P11 overall today and P9 in class just wasn't his day, with a couple of moments where he did have to back out on the opening stint, and then that mistake, of course, right towards the end on the second stint costing him further, but still enjoying great battling as we see the battle here between what was Tillin and Fletcher, and also there Newman, if I'm not mistaken. I think in fact that's Nathan Foster in the Audi, but as they made the way out of the corner there, the McLaren flying high, and just not the day for Martin Tillin. But of course Magny calls next time, but he will be up against it given the fact he's got to learn the circuit. But after the mid-season break, we could see those fortunes turn the other way, since it's a good set of circuits coming up for the driver that we do recall in season 8. He did fly high in Germany at the Nürburgring. But we'll have to wait and find out whether it'll work out his way as we now get ready for our third and final interview of the day, and that will be with our AM winner of Michael Warrington. And well, the thing for Michael Warrington is it never seemed to be anything but a win in the bag today, as he gets ready to join me in the interview room. And as he's about to come on in, well, Michael Warrington absolutely flying for UKSimRacing Car Marte, and unstoppable it would seem from start to finish. And it'll be interesting to hear his perspective on what was an AM race to remember. And as he joins me now, Michael, firstly, congratulations on what was an absolutely staggering first win in the AM class for yourself this season, taking the win in P19 by a margin of over 20 seconds at the line, albeit perhaps aided by Aaron McGregor running out of fuel right towards the end, as we gather. But still, to take the win up by such a margin and not put a foot wrong, you must be absolutely proud of your performance today. And we just had a word there from Mr. Warrington that unfortunately he's lost a little bit of audio, so hopefully he's able to get that back shortly. So in the meantime, we will just have a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry about that.
No problem. You're coming through it loud and clear, Michael. Did you lose audio on both ends, or was it just input?
It was basically I've got a wireless headset, and my headset decided to turn off on me at the most inconvenient time.
No problem. Well, I happily see your praises again. Firstly, I just wanted to say, as you join us now, it was an absolutely staggering run from yourself in the UKSimRacing Car Marte car. Qualifying on pole in the AM class, never letting it go, battling with pros and elites around you, and in the end, taking the win by over 20 seconds, albeit partially aided a little bit by Aaron McGregor's very late retirement, running out of fuel with only 3 corners to go. But still, a 20-second margin all the same. You must be absolutely proud of your first win in class.
Absolutely. It's come as a shock, but it was, I'm over the moon with that. The pace was definitely new to me. It was something like about half a second I've gained from, say, week 1 officials to tonight's race. So I'm absolutely thrilled with that result.
Well, take us through from the perspective of firstly qualifying. It was a very strong lap, albeit at the start of qualifying it was close, but as the 4 laps went on, you just seemed to find a bit more pace and really come to speed. Was that the goal of qualifying, just to gradually build up the laps? What was your approach? Definitely was to build it up. The first lap was definitely a bit of a banker. I fueled for 4 laps, so I knew I could afford to sort of ease my way into qualifying. So it was sort of a banker, and then just sort of trying to push and refine the corners as I was going along, and just take a few more risks with potential off tracks once I knew I'd got a decent time on the board. Well, in the end, as decent times continue to pile in on the board, you found a way to have an absolutely sensational time, and, well, putting yourself on pole and also a couple of rows clear from the next AM driver. Did that change the way you wanted to approach the start of this race? Because, of course, the infamous sentence of Monza Turn 1, it's enough to make any experienced race have a shiver go down their spine.
Yeah, definitely. Knowing I got the few drivers behind that were obviously of a different class, and that little bit of a gap meant I was definitely not going to be forcing any moves or sort of defending hard into turn 1. It was more of an aim for survival. And, most of the race, to be fair, was pretty much a survival, and just try and stay on the back of cars that were around me and make use of the draft.
Now, we did see, of course, speaking about that survival, there were a number of instances where you were on the back of a number of drivers, such as, for example, David Larson in the Pro class, also Dean Powell and Ryan Davis towards the end in the Elite class. And even earlier on, finding yourself in the fight for what was P10 in the Elite class between Austin William Campbell and Daniel Lee. Was there any temptation there to try and muscle them, or just try and prove a point to them? Look, I may be an AM driver, but I'm quite on the pace of you guys today.
To be quite honest, not at all. I was just like I say, I was at the back of the packs. I didn't want to try and put a wheel in. I'd got a bit of an eye on the relative. I knew where things were looking in class, and obviously picking the points up for the class was basically where my mind was going. It was more race management than trying to stick a wheel in. Last thing I wanted to do was do that, and not only ruin my own race, but ruin someone else's race for what would essentially be no reason.
Well, that makes sense. A very sensible approach. And from your perspective, just talk us a little bit about driving the Ferrari around here, because we've heard in the build-up to tonight, the Ferrari just has this magical straight line speed, particularly in that 5th and 6th gear around Monza. And also, what of it being effectively its home circuit in Italy, it must be a joy to fly the banner high through the Schedera.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the speed down the straight is definitely a lovely advantage around here. It's once it builds, once it gets the traction, and once it gets into the higher gears, it really does fly and catch up with people in the draft. And but yeah, the rest of it is sometimes it's just trying to hold on to it through a car. It doesn't like the or I found it doesn't like the left change of direction. It definitely wants to let the back end fly at that point, so it's just keeping it smooth through there, and then letting the straight line speed do its job.
Oh, indeed, being smooth through the corners and then flat on the power on the straights and making it all work together. And well, speaking of things working together, we saw with regards to the strategy, the mass exodus of the field into the pit lane at about the same time, yourself included in that. Were you looking to just come out amongst that pack of elite and pro drivers that you went in with, just to make sure you could stay with them and manage the pace, or did you decide that actually your strategy was around there, so by default you had to come in?
It was by default, but it was by default. It was the last lap I could make it on fuel, so I had to come in at that point. But no, it was a happy coincidence that it meant I was still in with the pack, because it meant I could just sort of stay on the tail of them, stay sort of in the draft, and stay following the cars in front. It was a little bit dicey coming out the pits. There was a little bit of battling and a little bit of people just sort of balancing out from different pit strategies from like a lap or two earlier. So it was interesting watching that battle out, but once we got through that, it was just back into the rhythm.
Oh, indeed. And watching the battles ahead of you play out, of course, in the Elite or the Pro class, I wouldn't be surprised if you had a metaphorical box of popcorn in that driver's seat, watching and guessing who's going to be overtaking whom as the race went on. But jokes aside and whatnot, coming to the line by such a margin and running on through, can we expect more of this from you as we head to Magny-Cours next week, the French circuit that's new to iRacing, and a very technical and twisty circuit at that?
I am making no predictions for next week. I'm going to be limited, unfortunately limited on practice throughout the week. So that is one thing that I'm going to have to work on getting some time in the car. I have driven it already this season, only briefly in a little bit of a test session. So I know where the corners are. I now just need to try and see what I can do in terms of getting my times down. But it's definitely going to be a see where we are kind of situation next week. I'm going to give myself no expectations to in how I'm going to perform, unfortunately.
Well, that's fair play, Mike. I can understand that. Of course, we'll be keeping our eyes out to see whether you can make it 2 wins on the bounce, or at least another podium to add to your run of accolades this season so far. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
It's going to sound similar to Martin's one. I do want to say a big thank you to UKSimRacing. Being part of that team atmosphere is definitely helped and improved. Me as a driver as well, it's like learning from that, but also sort of knowing the paces of people, of sort of your teammates around you, knowing sort of giving yourself markers to aim for, because sometimes if you're on your own, like I was in the previous season, it's sort of a guessing game of where you are on pace. So having that team spirit and having that that marker is definitely great, and the team spirit within the team is absolutely fantastic. Everyone helps everybody, so I do want to give a big thank you to them, and of course yourself and yourself for the broadcast, and also Si for running the league.
I'm sure your teammates do appreciate the kind words, Michael, and indeed, Si and myself will be very grateful for the thank you. But with that, we must say thank you once again to yourself for joining me in the interview room. Congratulations on what has been an absolutely phenomenal win for yourself in the AM class, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in France in a week's time.
That's great. Thank you for having me, Paul. Cheers. Take care.
All the best. So hearing there from Michael Warrington, your AM winner in the number 31 at Tiki SimSport Car Marte car. And well, hearing his perspective there and what was really has been a night to remember, with the pace absolutely flying and really surprised at his own pace going into qualifying and then the race. And it was interesting to hear that he really aimed to build up qualifying, and that's something which we have seen a mixture of approaches from some drivers, particularly drivers in the AM class and the pros. We've normally seen them run all 4 laps with a single tank of fuel, whereas in elites we do see that split gamble. Some decide to go with 4 laps of fuel, and therefore they build themselves up to that final lap with the cars as light as possible. The tyres are fully warmed in, and therefore they need to push it as much as possible. Meanwhile, others decide to go for 2 laps of fuel in the car, plus the out lap, of course, and that first lap being the bank, the second lap being the attack lap. But it does mean if they miss out on that attack lap and do not nail the lap to the post, then they have to go again, and they have to all put it down to a single lap to get their best possible time. But Warrington converting that pace shown in qualifying into the race, and will playing it very smart as well, knowing the gap he had to his fellow AM drivers and never losing sight of the fact he's there to win in the AM class, not to steal overall positions from the elite and pro drivers, because that's not going to give him points. It may give him kudos, it may give him bragging rights, but it doesn't put anything on those championship standings. And in the end, bringing it on home and flying the Tiki SimSport Car Marte flag high as he made his way into the pits there. On the images we can see on the back of our screen with regards to coming into the pit lane with that max exodus as we referred to, but still playing it right, bringing it home on the strategy and never losing sight of the true goal. And I think now he's really announced himself as one of the big contenders in the AM class championship. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today. And well, you have heard from just then Michael Warrington in the number 31 Ferrari for Tiki SimSport Car Marte. You also heard earlier on from the number 3 driver of Martin Tillin in the Tiki SimSport Corpa Elite machine. And we also heard at the very start there from our overall and elite class winner of Hakonet Kristad from Ignium Motorsport in the 37 McLaren, the man with a plan to run away from the field from start to finish and never look back. But with that concludes our post-round interviews, and now the big question, of course, we come on to is how have the standings changed after 3 rounds? And of course, these results provisional, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, we can see going to the elite class firstly that after 3 rounds it is Joe Newman at the very top, but with the absence of Daniel Thomas today, that will effectively be his drop score for this season. It does mean now the championship is blown wide open once again, because whilst Newman only leads based on result count back, it's an 8-point delta between Newman Thomas through to Gestad, with the P3 driver there jumping all the way up into P3 after what was a relatively quiet start to the season with that P5 in Silverstone, if my memory serves me correctly, and now he'll be on the charge once again. The reversal of that, of course, will be that Daniel Lee in P4 on at 31 points. We try to go on the offensive after Gristab, albeit a point between the two of them. And then you can see going on further down, Ryan Moles only a further 2 points behind, where as they make the way deeper and deeper into this season and heading into what will be at the round at Magny-Cours. The first endurance round will carry a lot of weight with it, because whilst it's equated to the same number of points as any given sprint round, it's how they position themselves going into the mid-season break, and that will be critical to success, with momentum being such a key factor in such a close championship. Josh Fletcher there on 25 points, a good set of points today, but I think he'll feel as though there could have perhaps been a little bit more on the table, with a 4-point delta now to Ryan Moles, but he still holds advantage over Cy Anthony, with Sam Congreve, Joshua Pratt and Damien Lovick completing the top 10 there, and then just outside the top 10, best of the rest, Jacko Taylor on his debut, 15 points to his name and up to P11 immediately. Behind him, Nathan Foster there with 12 points, not his day today, and the iRacing Blue Drive continued to try and find his way back inside the top 10, with Matthew Crispin in P13 ahead of Martin Tinnant and Sean Valandia. And then we have Sam Sherwood, Austin William Campbell, Alexander Hill, Ryan Davies, Dean Powell to the end of the top 20, with Stephen Masters and Cameron Hawes completing your elite standings. Coming on to the pro class, meanwhile, we can see here that Alex Gaines leads the way by 7 points over John Eddowes. Gaines may have not picked up the win today, but another podium finish has secured him that leading position by a good margin, and now with more than a single point between himself and the rest of the field, he can start to work hard on opening up that advantage as we head towards the final portion of the opening half of the season. John Eddowes, however, will try to stop him, but it is the two BMW drivers right now who seem to be flying high in the M4s up front, with Peter Cox and Lamborghini Huracan Evo just behind there on 34 points, 11 down off of the top two, and only ahead of Nathan Scott based on result countback. Nathan Scott today having a great result, and he's looking to continue that form. There's no doubt about it for Simran Racing Blue, with Edward Knight not in attendance today, dropping back to P5. But again, this will be effectively his drop score for the season, and therefore we can expect plenty more for him later on in the season schedule. Chris Edison moves to P6 there, picking up 10 points today. A good result for the UK Sim Racing driver, as he holds 2 points over what is Dan Blackwell. But Blackwell there, the name that really has jumped up into P7 with that win today, plus both of the bonus points for the fastest lap of the pole lap, and Blackwell showing no signs of slowing down, with Jeff Griffiths in P8 ahead of David Larson and Paul Smith to complete the top 10. Outside the top 10, best of the rest, Joel Amos in P11 for Symphony Esports White, ahead of Yeko Boshov, with Martin Fernie, Mark Collicott and Tom Farr completing the top 15, and Tom Farr today digging in to get a good number of points on the standings there, 4 points to his name, and definitely right now picking up the pieces after a difficult start. And then we have Daniel Merchant, Colin Patterson, Stuart Brown, Dion Wren and Ollie Pimley completing the run of the pros. An unfortunate day for Dion Wren, it didn't go his way, with that retirement costing him dear. Coming on to the AM class then, we can see in the Drivers' Championship standings, we can see Darren Sharples on 44 points, leading by 8 points over Michael Warrington. Sharples continues to lead and now does seem to be one of the mainstays up there, but with Warrington's performance today and picking up both the bonus points as well, the momentum is on his side going to mainly core, and it will be the rivalry of Sharples and Warrington, albeit we did get see the two share the same sections of tarmac today, but you would imagine that if we do see them both up front and both competing for the win at Manly Core, it is going to be a thriller that we'll all be looking forward to. But it's not just about those two, of course. The consistency of Casper Brotner really coming to light. Now in P3 on 32 points, one clear of Brock Freight, with Mark Johnson there in P5 for UK Sim Racing. But Mark Johnson today, with those difficulties and having to go to the pits after an early incident, the UK Sim Racing driver there missing major points, and will have to effectively treat this round as a drop score, with Daniel Payes P6 there for Old Dudes in Cars, also staying close to his old rival from Season 8. Adrian Kukulis there, not in attendance today, and therefore P7, with Matt Maddox just behind for BDM Racing, still picking up a point for his resilience, and then Aaron McGregor with that late disaster at the end, running out of fuel, only what was a mile or so from the finish line, not working out for the privateer, and Eden Frazina there, redeeming himself after that disaster at Daytona, and moving himself back inside the top 10 on what is 19 points. We can see outside the top 10, best of rest, Ryan Gonzalez there for Tiki Simsport Toa on 14 points and 5 behind the top 10 and trying to get back into the mix, with Thomas Baljak only a further point behind and 2 points ahead of James Connolly and Ben Watkinson, with Frank Klein turning around those difficulties of Daytona and picking up a good haul of points there to get to 10 points in P15. He holds a 2-point advantage over Simon Hartley, the two Tiki Simsport Copper drivers battling for position, with Richard Curie, Jack Bullen and AG Garcia completing the AM standings. And then coming onto the Teams Championship standings, we can see here that after 3 rounds, it is UK Sim Racing that leads the way by a single point over Protech Motorsport. Protech Motorsport really leaving the cards on the table today, and 1 point is the delta, with Simran Racing Red a further 6 points behind, and that battle at the top of the team standings continues to stay incredibly close. We're not seeing any drivers break out, and indeed it does look as though here that is being replicated in the Teams Championship standings. And well, 3 rounds, and you say we shouldn't expect that, but indeed that goes to show you how balanced the teams and the classes are as we continue to go into the depths of the season. Old Dudes in Cars there in P4 and 55 points. The best part of what is 8 points behind Simran Racing Red, but they won't let that deter them and chase after the top 3. 5 points clear of Tiki Simsport Carmate, with Tiki Simsport Kiri there a further point behind. We then have Simran Racing Blue on 46 points, find themselves sandwiched between the battle for P6 and the battle for P7, whereby Ignu Motorsport are not too far behind after a major haul of points today, and then Ignu Motorsport Spark as well, keeping their sister team honest in P9 on 42 points, albeit falling behind today due to a deficit in point score. Tiki Simsport there in P10, their baseline team, with best of the rest Tiki Simsport Toa, and then we have Symphony Esports White, followed by Tiki Simsport Copper, and then Symphony Esports Black, and BDM Racing completed the top 15, and then last but not least is Team Zor there in P16 on 6 points, and their misfortune today really cost them, but still, you can imagine they'll be looking to bounce back at Magny Court, and I suspect they will, given the fact their drivers will be determined as ever to prove the point that they can fly fast. But with that, that concludes the team standings, Cap, and now we do look to what is the conclusion of today. Because thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We do appreciate you tuning in as always. And if you do want to know more about the UK Sim Racing community, if you've enjoyed the show today, you've been watching the racing and think that you'd like to be out on the grid with all of our drivers, alternatively, you just want to know a little bit more about all the series we run or everything in between, well, you can, of course, head to our official website. That's UKSimRacing.co.uk. And, well, if you go there, as we saw earlier, the website full of details, including the latest standings, the upcoming series, and everything else about us. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website, but you do want to go to a link which is a little bit less formal, perhaps, where if you're a Twitter user, you can, of course, go to our Twitter. That is twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates, and they include Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, their YouTube address there, and Swello Meta, one of the #1 coaches on iRacing, for the simple reason that Swello Meta looks to break down your approach in terms of your driving style and your approach to sim racing into individual components, and focuses on 3 key components which you'll take forward and can look to improve on first and foremost before moving on to the next couple of components. And the idea behind that is not to overload you with information, but to help you achieve what you're looking for, whether it be finding a 10th a lap, finding a way to drive more consistently, or a better way to preserve the tyres. Swello Meta has a sim racing course for you. And then we also have their Race Anywhere, and their web address, raceanywhere.co.uk, and will Race Anywhere as the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We also have Demon Tweaks there, their web address, demon-tweaks.com, and they are the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide, whether it be in sim racing or real-world motorsport. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks can help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. And then last but not least, we do of course have Amazon, their web address, amazon.co.uk, and Amazon is the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work for the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, which include, but are not limited to, Amazon Prime, Amazon Alexa, and also Amazon Fire TV. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the fire burns on in the hearts of our drivers as they make the way now from Italy to France for round number 4 in a week's time. On Sunday, the 29th of January 2023, we'll take on the Nevers Manicourt circuit, and, well, whilst it has been a staple of the Formula 1 calendar in past years, it is becoming potentially a staple of our GT3 calendar, at least for Season 9, as it makes its debut. And the big question is, who will master the art of the endurance round and the twists and turns of the Magny Court circuit and come out on top going into the season break in our Elite, Pro and Am classes? All the championships are wide open, they could not be closer, and this could be a tide turner with regards to how they go into that break with the momentum on their side or without it, and look to have to turn it around going into round number 5. The story continues then, but until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.